Okay. I believe we're live. Let's see. All right. Yes. We are live over there on YouTube. Pull this over here. Let's do this thing. Well, I'm getting some stuff set up over here there, Rick. How are you doing tonight?
Yeah, doing all right, generally.
That's good.
Busy. And, active trying to solve all the problems while the world falls apart. Okay, let's see.
Let's see. All right. All right, we're going live.
So
we're live over here.
Chat on this.
Oh no. Yeah, that's the only thing is that chat is gonna be split between TikTok and it's gonna be split between TikTok and YouTube. So let's see. Pop out the chat.
So you'll just read it to me and whatnot.
Yeah.
Or bring it on screen.
I know that I can share a window inside Video Ninja. We are working everybody to try to get this thing kind of situated. Let's see. Okay, so yes, I can share an entire screen, share a window. Here we go. I can share that.
That looks great. Okay.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a little small for me. I don't know how it looks for you.
It's okay. It's not too small for me.
Okay. Let's see. I actually forgot to.
Is that YouTube or TikTok?
Yeah, that's YouTube.
Got it. Okay. I don't do things on TikTok enough to know anything about it.
No, I totally understand that. TikTok's kind of a new area, a new venue, I guess, and I know that we usually get a lot of people over there. Let's see, TikTok. We're already streaming over there on TikTok. Godless Engineer connect. Okay.
Damn it. It's very humid here. I don't know if it's humid where you guys are.
It's not.
I would imagine.
Yeah, it's not too humid here. It is weirdly warm, I will say. Right now.
Here. We just had a thunderstorm roll over. You have that oppressive humidity right after that, so
yeah. Okay, let's see. All right, so I got both my YouTube comments and everything like that. I will highlight some as they come across, and you'll be able to see on my screen right there. Like, let's see. I need to crap. This is totally professional, everybody. By the way, I'm just letting y'all know I'm being totally professional. Like, yeah, we got this guy up on the screen right here.
Okay, I cannot see that. So
no, there you go.
Yeah, that's way too small. So let's see. Can I? Hold on, I might. There we go. Well, I have to choose, but okay.
Sorry. Yeah, I'm still working on this system. So this is $5 from Ben Holmes. If Paul got 1 Corinthians 15 from human tradents, modified the gospel in Galatians, and James in Galatians 1 equals James in Galatians 2, how would that change your final probability?
Human tradents. Okay, so like, let's suppose he said, it would depend on what he says, right? So if he says, they told me about this revelation, they told me that they read this in scripture, then it wouldn't actually probably make it worse for historicity. Whereas if he said, the disciples, if he said the word disciples, because that means someone that Jesus handpicked in life, he said the disciples of Jesus told me about this, that he died or whatever, and then he appeared to them, and then he appeared to me, that would actually start to move the probability towards historicity. So it depends on exactly what he says in 1 Corinthians 15. The fact that it's all the evidence points to this being a revelation means that we're just, it doesn't really argue against historicity. It just means that we lose the evidence for historicity that we could have had here. What we lose is the fact that there's no mention of Jesus being on earth. Like, there's no ministry in the thing. So like if he said, if 1 Corinthians 15 started with the ministry of Jesus, like, oh, and he was born the Messiah and he did whatever, yada, yada, then he was crucified by Pilate and killed, all the stuff that Ignatius does, right? Ignatius takes everything that Paul does that makes historicity implausible and puts it in to make historicity plausible again. So it completely changes the creed in 1 Corinthians 15 to do that. You can see that in Ignatians. I have my article online, How Did Christianity Switch to a Mythical Jesus? And where I show the examples. I also do this in Obsolete Paradigm, which is my new book. I show them back to back. So you see like 1 Corinthians 15, and then suddenly Ignatius is adding all this historical detail. If that was in Paul and it was authentic, that would be a slam dunk for historicity. Like historicity would be like 99% or 90% at least, would be pretty high. So again, it depends on what's actually there. Same with the others for like Galatians or the problem with James being the same. I'm not sure what effect that would have. I have to like that one's too convoluted to figure out like what effect would that have, because then it would just mean that James the I mean the pillar wasn't an apostle, right? So the problem we have with Galatians 1 is that Paul's language explicitly really says that the James there is not an apostle. He goes out of his way to formulate a Greek construction that makes him not an apostle. So if he's not an apostle, which that's what Paul says, and suddenly he's showing up as the pillars, one of the pillars, then that would mean one of the pillars wasn't an apostle, which would be very strange and hard to explain. So I'm not sure what it would do to historicity or mythicism, because it would throw a wrench in both theories. It doesn't make a lot of sense. I think historicity depends on ignoring the grammar of Paul in Galatians 1, and therefore assuming that James must be an apostle because he shows up in chapter 2 as an apostle. Anyway, so exactly what the effect would be if somehow Paul said, oh, that's the same James I was talking about before, I'm not sure, because I'd have to like go through and figure out like how does that affect anything. It affects, like, it throws a wrench in everybody's theory, like the historicists and the mythicists. So I'm not really sure. I can't do that off the fly is what the effect would be. You can toy around with it. So my chapter on the brothers passages in Obsolete Paradigm is the most complete analysis of how to do the math here. And so it gives you the most tools for figuring out the answer to this question yourself. So if you go there, that would be the place to start, to sort of figure out like, well, what would happen then? What would happen to all these other points if we change this one point? And it might even matter how the point is changed. So like, how do we know that James in Galatians 1 is the same as in Galatians 2? Like, what is Paul's? What are we imagining that this sort of lost version of Paul says that changes our understanding of that? So that might affect it too. I'm not entirely sure, but that's the place to go check. How are we doing? Are we all right?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, we're doing okay. You're a little low, but only on YouTube.
My volume? Whoa. My volume, my audio volume is low?
But only on YouTube. For some reason, it's only on YouTube that you're low.
Did you confirm that with multiple independent YouTubers? Because the same problem happened on another show, and it was just the person's volume was down. And then we had this guy at super high volume for the rest of the show, and it was really annoying. I
don't know. Multiple people are saying that it is.
This interface gives me no control over that. So normally other interfaces like StreamYard gives me the ability to change my mic volume. This has no controls for that. So
I can turn you up.
Yeah. Okay. So, yeah.
I'm working on it.
But then we'll be shouty on TikTok.
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure.
I'm counting this as a soft launch. We've begun. Is that where we're at? All right.
Yeah,
so
kind of.
I'm gonna pour my Pendleton Canadian whiskey. Shout out to Canada. You're doing things right. Okay. We're destroying civilization down here, but I can drink some of your whiskey to mollify my sadness.
Okay. All right. So yes, I believe that we have the sound normalized now. I think everybody is sounding good. Over there on the TikTok, we are going to be taking up guests from the TikTok. If you would like to request up, feel free. Let's see. You answered that one, which thank you for covering for me by answering that one.
As best I could do on the fly. That's a difficult question to answer on the fly. That's like a research question. It would take like a few days to work out, but
right.
I did the best I could.
No, you're good. So here's this one, $5 from Eric, says, if only demons were ignorant of God's plan in 1 Corinthians 2:8, why does Paul support this with an oracle about man and anthropos being ignorant in verse 9?
I'm not sure what that's referring to. Let me check.
Okay, while Rick is checking on that, I do want to say thank you so much to Board Agnostic for sending in a cowboy hat and mustache thing. Thank you so much for that.
A cowboy hat and mustache thing.
Very good. It's like a little icon thingy it's putting up there.
Here we go. Okay.
Yeah. How does this look on TikTok?
It was better.
Oh, okay, right.
Okay. I can fix that. I was meaning for it to be more horizontal, but that doesn't seem to work out. Fluid.
Are we sorted out over?
Oh yeah, we're good. Sorry, I'm trying to fix the layout over on TikTok while you were doing that research.
Yeah. So I just needed to get the context. So they're referring to scripture. So the reason it has to be man is because that's what the scripture says. So Paul can't change that, right? So he's just citing the scripture as just sort of a general parable about the fact that God hides everything, and then he says only the Spirit reveals the truth. So only people who have the Spirit learn the truth. That's what is said in verse 9. So right. So in verse 8, it's ambiguous as to who are the people who are being deceived. Now, obviously, it includes men because obviously only Christians are privy to the secret knowledge. So so God hid it from everybody of all levels of the heavens. But he's just quoting. It doesn't mean that he means men in the verse before, because in the verse before he's talking about what the theology is, and in verse 9 he's just quoting a scripture to back it. And if you're used to Christian apologists, they were the same then as today. Like the scriptures they quote to support things are often like not really very accurate to what they're trying to use it to prove. They're sort of desperately trying to get a scripture to mean something other than it obviously says. That's literally what they're doing. Paul does that all the time, like all throughout the letters. So, so that's the answer to that question. It's not that, Paul, that doesn't prove that Paul thinks that they're ordinary humans in verse 8. It's just that God hid everything from everybody except those who received the revelation, just as in, Romans 16:25-26. It talks about only those who get the revelation will know about it. Everybody else it's hidden from, and that includes demons above and probably angels. I'm assuming I don't know if there are any angels that are supposed to be included as privy. That would have been secret knowledge as to which angels got to know this. Probably none, according to the Ascension of Isaiah. So who knows?
All right, sound is fine. Okay. All right.
It's a good question though. These are more interesting questions than I usually get. So.
Yeah, I know. I mean, we're pretty opened up to a whole bunch of new audience, like doing both on YouTube and TikTok. Board Agnostic again, sending a mustache and hat. Thank you, yeehaw, for that. All right. Now we're caught up on all the super chats. We do have somebody that's already joined us in the Video Ninja room. We are going to get to Mario here in just 1 second. I do want to let people know over there on the YouTube, I have a pinned chat thing where you can actually join, and so you can hit up that link, give us your name and whatnot, and then we'll introduce you and whatever, and we'll get you in here over there on the Tickety Talk. If you can be tapping on the screen, I know that we're competing with some other people like Joel Reads Bible, as well as some other things, other people going live right now. So if you can, do your dailies and everything for the thing. If you'll notice, if you're part of the whole Godless fan club thingy down there, if you'll notice that we actually have some custom like little sticker things that you can put in the chat over there on the TikTok. So I think those help probably, but definitely try to get us up in likes over there. It would be nice if in the first half hour we had 10,000 of those like thingies over there on the TikTok. One can dream and hope and everything like that. All right, so I'm going to unmute Mario over here. He's been waiting about a half hour, also been listening to us troubleshoot and everything. How you doing tonight there, Mario?
All right. Can you hear me?
Yep, we got you. Now, are you over 18?
I'm 40.
Okay, yeah. And then what are your pronouns?
They, them.
Okay, cool. So, what would you like to ask Dr. Carrier tonight?
Well, there's, like people have, the way they've approached the issue of the historical Jesus is they've placed so much emphasis on finding this dude somewhere that they've neglected all the real people who kind of like lived out the Jesus myth, and I feel like we're just barely scratching the surface of studying those people.
Those people.
Yeah, I mean,
sorry.
To give it,
go ahead.
Rick. Assuming like Jesus ben Ananias, for example, or Theodos, or the Egyptian.
Yeah.
There's a few others. The Samaritan. And technically, really, like that's the Jewish collection. Then you can go to like Apollonius of Tyana for like the Greek version.
And then even John the Baptist, you point out.
John the Baptist, yeah, that's good. That's a good call too, because him, I know there's people who debate whether the passage about him and Josephus is authentic. I think it is authentic, and in fact, the reason I believe that is because it looks like it was obviously messed with, and there would be no reason to like fix a passage that you're faking. So the fact that Christians meddled in that passage proves that it really was there. So John the Baptist, we have corroboration. Now that's assuming, I can't remember if John the Baptist is mentioned in the Jewish War of Josephus or only in the Antiquities. That would be an interesting question because it shows John the Baptist shows up in Mark, but he doesn't show up in any text before that. So theoretically, John the Baptist could have been stolen from Josephus, so we might not have independent corroboration of John the Baptist. I don't know. I mean, the main answer to that is we have nothing about them, right? It's all lost, right? We might, like, for most of them, all we have is what Josephus says, and Josephus isn't a terribly reliable guy either. So there's not much to do, unfortunately. And I think that's the frustration for a lot of historians is they want to spin more stories about these guys, like write a whole book on John the Baptist, even though we literally know veritably nothing about John the Baptist. The data is just gone. I think people should try to resist that temptation. The fact is, we probably just can't know them. But it is worth pointing out that they existed and what they did. That's why I think the bit I talk about in on the Historicity of Jesus, it's elements, somewhere around elements 3 to 5 in chapter 4, where I cite the scholarship. So this has been pointed out by other scholars that these guys, the ones that they're all Jesus Christs, right? So like, the Egyptian and Theodos and all that, they all do things that make them into a new Joshua, that's Jesus, and they're all messianic, so that's Christ, so they're all Jesus Christs, which tells you that there's this, either there was this zeitgeist of people doing this, and people who can go watch my Wichita talk that you're all going to die. I talk about this, which is what I think is the most plausible historical Jesus model. Is, and I think someone once referred to it as this was, I didn't come up with this, but someone else referred to it as death by cop, where Jesus literally gets himself killed on purpose for part of his mission. So it's kind of like David Koresh trying to get himself killed so that he'll be this remembered as this great Messiah or whatever. Anyways, there's a theory that these guys were trying to get themselves killed to usher in the apocalypse. In other words, they're trying to activate Daniel 9. So that means that all these guys, and this is widely known, that Daniel 9 was understood as a dying Messiah myth. So like you can use all of these other guys to show that there was a pre-Christian notion of a dying and rising Messiah concept, and it comes out of Daniel. And so all these guys are trying to make themselves the Messiah of Daniel that starts the doomsday clock. But they have to get themselves killed to do that, and then also make themselves believe to be the Messiah. So they got to do Jesus-y things, which means Joshua. They got to do something that elevates, because Joshua created the first Jewish state, so the Messiah who is supposed to redeem Israel has to recreate the conquest of Joshua symbolically in some way. So making themselves into a Joshua for bringing upon the end of the world, that makes them the Jesus Christ, and it plugs right into Daniel. So like studying these other guys is useful. Ignoring them is not doing any service to the field, and the field hasn't completely ignored them. There are studies on these guys. It's just most of the field doesn't read those studies either. They're not really interested in these guys, even though they're really important for understanding this. And even if Josephus made all these guys up or made up their stories, even if they were real, it's clear Josephus himself understood this concept. So Josephus is giving us evidence that people understood Daniel, the dying Messiah concept, was a thing. I suspect that's not the case. I think Josephus seems to not be aware of this, and consequently, I think that's evidence that they're real and really did the things that he reported. So that kind of supports that. And I think you could make a similar argument from Ben Ananias and John the Baptist too, where they're doing things that show an understanding of history that is relevant to understanding the origins of Christianity that a lot of scholars ignore. And so I assume that's what you're getting at.
Well, the so to speak Christ consciousness is always so to speak accompanied by a political consciousness. We can see this in the prophecy in Daniel of the rock that breaks the statue.
Right. Yeah, that would be, we're talking Daniel 7. Is that?
I don't. It was in the Last Temptation of Christ.
Oh, man, it's been a long time since I've seen that, so I don't know. No, the statue imagery for the empires is either Daniel 4 or Daniel 7. And yeah, I mean, it's obvious. I mean, the authors of Daniel had their own particular political secret meanings behind it all, but that, of course, never happened. So they, basically it was a failed prophecy. So after that, everybody had to reinterpret all of their weird imagery to try and make it be something else. But it was still political. Yeah.
And these keep coming up throughout history, like in the cargo cult movements and like in David Koresh, like you mentioned.
Yeah, it's an interesting question, is how much has Jewish messianism changed every religion on the planet?
Well, it's it's kind of a deeper anthropological phenomenon.
Well, some of it, like the human sacrifice concept, that goes way back as an atoning event, right? To save the community by sacrificing yourself. That's super ancient. That predates written history and so on. That's all true. But there's a particular way that the model gets activated seems to be emulation of Christianity. Like the cargo cults are obviously emulating Christianity because they're syncretizing, they're merging their local native religion with the imperialist religion, which was, the Christians with all their amazing, miraculous flying machines and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Mario, do you have any other questions for Carrier tonight?
Well, these movements are going to keep popping up, and it would be helpful for us to understand them, because I think that there is something to the whole Christ consciousness thing and the rock breaking the statue thing. I think there's something like real to that we can learn from.
Okay. Sorry, I wasn't paying attention. Was there a question there, Mario?
Well,
okay.
All I'm saying is that all of this leads somewhere.
Somewhere, like a bus stop?
It leads to practical activity, like changing society.
Like for the worse? Because I feel like that's what Christianity does, is it changes society for the worse.
Or is it like reacting?
Well, the statue has become too brittle. It's become too much about the image.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. So like the way ancient myth talked about political realities and social realities was through metaphors and analogies like that. Yeah, the idea of a statue becoming too big to withstand, its own weight, becoming too brittle and easily shattered. There you can get kind of a lesson, a sort of wisdom lesson about societies and things like that. I think that's true-ish. Although I think these guys weren't the smartest or best informed people, so they aren't necessarily right about everything, even if we can figure out what it is that they meant in case by case. It's kind of like being Jordan Peterson, only less educated, which is hard to imagine. Jordan Peterson's already pretty wrong about almost everything he says, but imagine if he had no education at all, or only an ancient education. His interpretations of what the symbolism meant in the Bible would be even worse than they already are. So I think there's got to be a caution about that. I think, you can go look for what lessons they understood at the time, but to know whether those lessons are true or not, you got to go back to modern empirical methodologies, political science as an actual science, for example. That's my view, anyways. Everybody knows I'm a ruthless atheist naturalist, and so don't believe in supernatural stuff, but.
I just want to say thank you to everybody coming in from Trust But Verifies live stream. I was up on Trust's stream earlier, and I'm glad that y'all are coming over from that. Thank you guys so much for that. Well, Mario, thank you so much for coming up and being our first guest tonight on the whole Ask a Mythicist Anything kind of show that we're doing. Appreciate you. And unless you have...
all of this is in an upcoming book I'm writing. I keep telling Carrier about it.
Oh, okay. So you've been talking to Carrier about it, huh?
Well, I've been commenting on his Facebook.
On Facebook. Yeah. And I think sometimes commented on my blog as well.
Okay. Cool. I didn't know that you guys had talked before.
Oh, well, I called the last time, I think.
Okay, cool. Awesome. Well, Mario, I think that we're gonna try to get some other people up. I do have some like super chats and everything to do. Thank you so much for being our first caller tonight, though. Yeah. Thank you.
On.
Thanks.
All right. Bye, Mario.
We've worked out the kinks now.
I think so.
All right.
See, there we go. Okay. Drop Mario. Everybody over there on the Tickety Talk, thank you guys so much for working to get us up. We're up over 5,000 of those likes over there. Really appreciate y'all. I do want to acknowledge Godwin for sending in, doing his dailies with the hearts. Also the Go Populars from Godwin. KC, my lovely KC over there, doing her populars. Thank you so much for that. $3.06 pencils. Thank you so much for your daily heart. KC with the goat trying to get us up to our thingy, our stream goal. Oppo sending in some roses. $3.06 pencils also sending in a go popular. KC with more goats. More roses from Crash. And
so do those things mean anything, or are they just decide what to throw at you with those pencils or goats or whatever?
Yeah, well, so each of them have like a value attached to them, but it's just like
see. Okay, they do mean something. Okay, yeah.
I do want to let people know though that I've started integrating a new feature to the stream here, and that's that I've got little effects for depending on what kind of super chat or TikTok gift you give. If you give like a TikTok gift that's at least 100, you're gonna get some confettis. You'll see I got the little confetti animation popping out the side there.
Wow.
If you do $25 super chat or more, or 1,000, anything that's worth 1,000 of those things on the coins or whatnot on the Tickety Talk, you're gonna get a bit of a money rain. It's gonna rain money.
Oh, that's what that was. Okay,
yeah. Thank you so much to Logan Bryce George for the donut. I feel like that's saying something though. A heart from Ren. And we do have this $2 super chat from Oceanus Helios. It says, raid on the way from Trust But Verify. Thank you so much for their trust. Okay, we're all caught up on those. Now, Rick, let's see. Let me get Mario's down. All right. So tonight we are trying to discuss, did Jesus exist? The topic that a lot of people seem to, have an issue with. Both atheists and theists seem to have an issue with that. Now, Carrier, you have put out a recent book, Obsolete Paradigm, which I'm currently trying to work on the audiobook for. I'm working on it like every single day. I'm trying to get that done. But I'm wondering, what's the biggest like pushback maybe that you've gotten on this new book, or have you had any yet?
Trying to think. Substantively, no. No, it's all been positive. I think the intent. So anybody who doesn't want it to be true that Jesus didn't exist has kind of decided that they're going to avoid the issues. So I think the response is generally to not read the book. Like it's like dark, evil things inside, and they can't expose themselves to it. And so they're rather than respond, they're just not even going to know what's in it, and to deny any need to read it, and so on. And I think that's just where we've gotten to. I just heard recently, I didn't see it, but I heard a description of it. Trent Horn did a video very recently attacking Dan McClellan, and somehow got on the subject of mythicism, which I don't understand because McClellan's not a mythicist, but and apparently it was like some like wackadoo conspiracy theory version of Jesus mythicism where it connects to like zeitgeist and Satanism or something. It was just unintelligible and like ridiculous, but has nothing to do, like connects nothing at all with the peer-reviewed actual academic mythicism, and yet asserts that all mythicism is this junk that was so what's the point of doing that? Like anybody who knows anything, or who's the kind of person who would check something before believing it, they're going to know that that's bullshit, and they would know that Trent Horn just bullshitted them, right? So what's that for? Clearly it's not to try and persuade people who are going to catch the bullshit. It's clearly designed to convince people who haven't studied any of this yet to avoid it. It's evil. You can't talk about it. These guys are crazy nutcases. They're talking about zeitgeist. The video, remember all the stuff we did about zeitgeist and how horrible and cultish that was? You're going to go to hell if you watch it or whatever. And like even I like criticize zeitgeist as garbage, but and yet it influenced Bill Maher's movie Religulous, which kind of like ruined that movie. But but the point is like, this is the front. They're not even being serious anymore. They're not even trying to be serious. Like, we're not going to do an academic critique. We're just going to completely lie about what it is and turn it into the devil. And so that maybe we can convince people to not read it, and therefore it will go away. Right. Like, I think that's kind of the response that I've gotten so far to Obsolete Paradigm. Other than that, like the responses of people who actually read the book has all been positive. Like I've always had, everybody says it's easy to read. It's really fascinating. It has a lot of information that they were surprised to find, or that was useful for whatever they were doing. It's the same reaction to my first book on this, on the historicity of Jesus, where they're saying like, even if you don't agree with the thesis, there's so much useful stuff in there for, counter apologetics, because there's so much like setting you into the actual historical setting of how literature worked and early Christianity worked and stuff like that. So it's full of useful data. No matter whether you're a mythicist or not, it's a useful book. But if you're interested in the debate, it is the book you have to read, because it shows where we are after 10 years. The consensus was challenged, and then everybody ran away. Like no one really seriously engaged the original book at all. Like the few academic reviews we had essentially ignored most of the content and lied about the rest. And it's kind of a sort of like similar thing to what Trent did, except instead of being ridiculous, although Litwa's treatment was ridiculous, accusing me of being possessed by demons and stuff is pretty a weird way to dismiss mythicism. But no, like some of them, they're dressed up to look like serious academic arguments, not look like the crazy shit that Trent Horn just did. But they're still just as false, right? They're just a complete misrepresentation of what's actually in the book or what isn't in the book, and so on. They did that to that book. I think this time they realized that doesn't really work, because I just exposed them for lying about the book. So I think they're probably just going to ignore obsolete paradigm. That's what I suspect. So people who don't want this conclusion to be true, my prediction is they're just going to ignore it mostly.
Yeah. Let's see. We do have a couple of questions. Are you fine to take questions from the audience?
Of course. Yeah.
Okay.
That's what I'm here for. Yeah.
Yeah. So
I've
first
got
of all,
adequate whiskey. I'm all right.
Ren sent Let 'em Cook. Thank you so much for that. And then also Ren sent some goats. And we've got Hammy doing his dailies. Thank you so much there, Hammy. Okay, so first question that we've got here to handle is this one. Oh, wait, hold on. So sorry. Wait a second. Oh, there we go. Why Deisman's seven letter theory over Bauer's 4-letter theory for the authentic letters of Paul?
Good question. Especially lately, because we have a whole vanguard. I mean, I guess this audience seems to know what they're talking about and are already read up on all this stuff. So, so this isn't like people who are new to this, but if anybody, I guess you have a lot of viewers right now, so maybe there are some who don't know what we're talking about here. But there's been a wave of serious scholars publishing serious peer-reviewed books arguing that maybe even Paul didn't exist, and that even if he did, maybe all the letters we have are fake. Right? Not even like there's 4 authentic ones. No, they go all the way to none. Or if there were authentic letters, we don't know what they look like because they were edited so much. And that's like Vincent, Livesey, technically Trobish even. So, which kind of surprised me, because it's like it's even more extreme than me. Like they're going all the way, bypassing everything. They're also being ignored, by the way. He's just, no one wants to. People who don't want Paul not to have existed or all his letters to be forged would rather not read Vincent or Livesey. So I think that's kind of, or they'll give kind of like flippant reviews that are just sort of pats on the head, like condescending or patronizing. No one's really taking it seriously. I wrote several blogs about it. I'm not convinced by this new wave, but I do think what they're doing is important, because they're doing a lot of good background analysis stuff. They're showing like what is the best argument you could make for this, which is what they're doing. And that's valuable, and I think that's worth looking into. And in the process of doing a lot of great background stuff, like Vincent goes backwards, like one of his books, he goes backwards in time through Christians, their own history of themselves, back in time, and shows how it's all lies. so that lying about their history is just the norm, right? It's just normally, which of course is, I've always argued that and shown my own evidence for that. But for him to do the whole series back is pretty, it's just excellent. Well done. So it's still useful, even if you don't agree with their thesis. So yeah, the question is why do I stick with the 7? and not go further down and say there's only 4 authentic letters of Paul. The main reason for on the historicity of Jesus is just not to complicate the theory. So the more assumptions you add against consensus, the lower your prior goes, unless you can build a lot of evidence to get that probability back, which is a lot of work and a lot of pages. And so for me, it was just easier to go, let's just go with what the consensus is right now. And if I can show historicity is improbable even on the consensus positions, then a fortiori, if you start ditching letters, you're in even worse place than that. So basically, it was an argument a fortiori is why I went with the 7. Now you could ask the deeper question: is where am I actually? What do I actually think is the case? I'm down to 6 now because astonishingly, like Chrissy Hansen published a really good book on this. And I'd seen some arguments that Philemon is not credibly authentic. And it's hard to argue that because Philemon is so short and so weird. So it's hard. You can't do like standard stylometrics. Like it's really difficult. That letter's hard to peg. It's also useless because it has nothing in it about Jesus' historicity. So it was of no use to my study and still isn't. But I'm convinced now, like, I think Hansen's argument is convincing, and she gets together arguments from many other scholars as well. She's, like, not by herself on this, that Philemon is fake. And I do think Philemon, and I wrote a blog about this. People can go look at that. I have some criticisms of her book, but they're not, like, major things. But, yeah, that's where I am on that. So I think Philemon is now below 50% chance that it's authentic. It's just that it doesn't do anything for historicity because it's useless. So why the other 6? Why do I stick with the other 6? The reason is, so like one of the examples is Hansen tries to argue that maybe Philippians is fake. And there is some case to be made for that in the sense that Philippians is also weird in a lot of ways. I just don't think it's weird enough to convince me that it's not authentic. And the stylometrics that we do have, especially the good stuff. I did a whole article on good and bad stylometric studies of Paul. And Lakin did the best of them all that I've seen. Her statistical study makes a pretty good case that the 6 are authentic. She didn't do Philemon because you can't do statistical stylo on it. It's too short. But it makes a really good case that the 6 that are left are authentically Pauline. And that agrees with my impressions just from looking at what I know from like the core letters and how Paul behaves. Like I have my own sense from reading Paul, like what his discourse style is, what his attitudes are, what he avoids talking about. And his weird peculiarities that I think are things that forgers wouldn't even think to try and replicate. And I find that like Philippians fits in there. So I would say it's the lowest probability of being authentic, but it's still above 50%. And anyway, so that's the kind, I could go on, but that's the kind of reasoning that I'm at. I'm not convinced by, and you got to think of like Bauer, like that's so long ago, like so much has happened in terms of sophistication of stylometric analysis and discourse analysis. And so much has changed since then that it's very difficult to like be persuaded by those kinds of arguments that are more opinion based than fact and evidence based. So anyway, like I said, so I'm not like super confident in the 7, well 6 I should say now, but I put it above 50% for those reasons.
Okay, yeah, sorry, I had someone messaging me. That's kind of interesting. I was going to ask you about how that would be affected by the stylometric stuff, because there's a Christ Before Jesus is big on TikTok over there, and a lot of people really support their work, and they're kind of curious as to why you don't like their work.
This is who are the authors of that? Remind the audience.
They're not in the audience right now, but
what's their names?
What do you mean? Nobody asked. I was just asking.
No, Christ. You said Christ Before Jesus.
Yeah, Christ Before Jesus. It was in the stylometric blog.
Yeah, that's the book. Okay, yeah. I was just wondering if that's what you were talking about. Yeah.
Yeah.
Here, let me bring that up. Oh, is it not going? Come on now. There we are. Yeah, so it's on my blog. It's Statistical Stylometrics, the Good, the Bad, and the Horrid. And I have part 1 is about Paul. There are actually more than I covered. There's a book out now that I just read a review of in Society of Biblical Literature Review. It's I can't remember the author or the thing, but it's a scholar who's complaining about stylometrics, and so I immediately checked to see if he looked at Lacan, and he didn't. He doesn't have Lacan in there. So a lot of his complaints about why stylometrics is fishy and often rigged and done badly, and therefore we can't follow the conclusions of it with Paul. Now, this was an author who's an apologist, so he's trying to push for all the letters are authentic. So he's not trying to get down to the 4 Bowers text. He's trying to say, no, all of them, all 14 or 13 or whatever. So anyway, the fact that he didn't cover Lacan means that he's not doing all of the studies. But a lot of his critiques I agree with, and actually I pointed out myself. So in my article, I did 3 people. One was Savoy, which I showed had problems. But it gets kind of like the traditional outcome, but shakily. Then I do Katerina Lacan, who's really good. Like that's probably the gold standard for stylometrics for anything. And that's the one to go by. Like I say, if you want to read any stylometric study about Paul, it's hers, which is a dissertation. So you have to go. It's a thesis, so you have to go find it. It's not a book that you can go by, but it's out there. And then you're talking about Brett and Wingo, Christ Before Jesus. Yeah, so then I do Brett and Wingo. So I'm just going to tell you first my opinion. This is my opinion. I give reasons for my opinion in the article. So people want to know why I think this. I think it's a con job. I think it's a total grift. I think they're just trying to make money off of the mythicist market by making a bunch of bullshit. And because there's a lot of really suspicious behavior in the book. Like giving a lot of citations when it's not relevant, and then suddenly when you really need to have a citation, there isn't one. Or giving specific details and examples when it doesn't matter. But then suddenly when it does matter, all those examples and details are missing. And in terms of like what you expect from a stylometric study, like it's complete garbage because it follows none of the conventions of how to correctly report scientifically a stylometric study. It has like a bunch of like fuzzy graphs and stuff, but with no metrics. There's no metrics in their stylometrics. This is they'll show you these like the trees, right? The relationship trees, but there's no numbers, right? There's no like what are they measuring? Like, and so you can show that. I can show the example of Savoy, who uses a method similar to theirs, and his is bad. It's not terrible. It's just not great. But you can look at like his is like 1,000 times better than theirs, right? So that if you want to see like even a bad but serious stylometric study is 1,000 times better than theirs. But if you want to see what that looks like, what does that mean? Look at Savoy. And so you look at Savoy and you go, whoa, where's all this stuff in Brett and Wingo? It's not there. And anyway, so I go in my critique of it and I point out all the things that are missing, all the things that I find suspicious about it. And I've heard since then that they're supposedly trying to get versions of it through peer review somehow. I'm very curious to see how that goes and what comes out of it. But we know like bad stuff can still pass peer review. Like Savoy's isn't that great. But to get it through peer review, like in a serious journal and not some wankadoo pay your way journal, they would have to at least meet the bar of Savoy, right? They've got to at least do what he's doing. And even what he did is criticizable and not great. But also he's not trying to make the kinds of arguments that they're doing, because they're doing like chronological directionality, which you can't do with stylometrics. They're making weird arguments, like they depend a lot on the stylometrics of Irenaeus, and the Greek of Irenaeus doesn't exist. So they rely on a modern back translation from the Latin into the supposed original Greek, which is not the original Greek of Irenaeus. Anyway, there's just a lot in there that is just wildly ridiculous. And I think a lot of peer reviewers, even super biased peer reviewers, are going to be like, squinting their eyes at this. So anyway, I don't know what will come of that. But right now, it's a garbage book, by my opinion. It's completely useless. You shouldn't believe anything in it. Unless it's something that is cited and you check the citation and confirm that it's correct. That's pretty much all you should believe in that book. But anyway, yeah, if people want my full take on that, that's in there. That article on my blog.
So we do have Sir that is coming in from the TikTok. Sir, can you speak so that we can see if we can hear you? Okay, we can't hear you there, sir. Let me figure this out real quick. Let's see.
It worked with Mario. What?
Yeah, well, Mario was not coming in from TikTok. Mario was coming in from another side. So I'm gonna have to attempt. I'm gonna have to attempt this and see how it works. But
all right, let's do it. Is this your first time doing this setup? Is that why?
Yeah. You're in my inaugural one. So let's see.
Yeah, let's test it. Let's find out. Yeah.
Oh crap! I think you're coming through now. Let me see if I can work this out. Hey, sir, can you speak?
Yeah, can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, we got you. We got a little bit of a duplication on Carrier's side. I'm gonna see if I can work that out. Sir, why don't you interact with Carrier real quick?
Okay, well, first, do you want me to say like my age and all that stuff and pronouns, or do you care?
I feel like I know you, but yeah, I mean that's probably good form. What are your are you over 18? Over 18, and what are your pronouns?
Over 18, he, him.
Okay, got you.
I had a Rank Raglan question, if I could ask Carrier.
Yeah.
If you do the Rank Raglan score on, like, let's say Matthew's Jesus, it would be a lot higher than like Paul's Jesus, right? I'm just wondering.
Oh yeah, like massively higher.
When you do the score to kind of figure out your priors or whatever, it seems like you kind of go with like the Matthew. Like, why not go with like the Paul Jesus? Like, is there a reason for that? Why you go with Matthew over?
Yes. Okay, so this is going to be annoying. Hold on.
Yeah.
The echo's a problem.
Yeah. Well, 1 second. I'm gonna have to switch real quick over here, and then so you're as soon as Carrier's done talking there, sir, I'll have to switch back over. But
okay.
for right now, I'm gonna have to switch off of that. So just 1 second there, sir. Okay.
That's annoying.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So, all right. Yeah. So the reason is that we don't have any definite historicity markers in Paul. So we get to, if we didn't have the Gospels, if all we had was Paul, then the Rank Raglan thing wouldn't even be relevant. That is not how we build our prior. We have to build our prior out of something else, some other commonality set. It would be revelatory founders, which wouldn't go well for historicity either, because that's all Paul talks about is Jesus revealed this to us, etc. The reason that when the Gospels exist, as soon as they exist, and I also make the point on the historicity of Jesus in early chapters, I point out that if the Gospels were still circulating or were circulating when Paul wrote, I think that would be an argument against Mythicism, because it's very unlikely, unless something else was different. But if everything else is the same, the evidence-wise, and the Gospels are circulating with Paul, and Paul is acknowledging the Gospels and their contents, I think that would up the probability of historicity at least above 50%. There's reasons why, and I go into all that. It's significant that the Gospels first put Jesus into history after that period, right? So it's about 40 years later, 30 to 40 years after the fact. And we have no other attestations of historicity, meaning we don't have like mundane memoirs or anything like that. We just have the Gospel. So it's myth right out of the gate. So that puts Jesus in a set of heavily mythologized heroes. And it's only because of the Gospels. If we didn't have the Gospels, that wouldn't be the case. And so with the Gospels, Jesus is in the set of people who are heavily mythologized. And so the prior probability that a heavily mythologized person exists is our prior, because now we have a set. We know he's a heavily mythologized hero. How many of those guys usually turn out to be real? And then you can just figure out, it's just a straightforward figuring out the frequency, which you do empirically. And then with margins of error, et cetera, which is all the stuff that I do. And so that's why, and I pick, and I go through several sets in different myth sets on the historicity of Jesus. Oh, I disappeared.
Oh,
it vanished.
Yep, there you go. You're back.
And I add a few more sets, like he belongs to a lot of myth-heavy sets in Obsolete Paradigm. But the problem is all of these different sets have very few members, so it's very difficult to build stats out of that. You could do like the arduous work of I disappeared again. The arduous work of adding all those sets together to create some sort of weird superset, sort of Frankenstein superset. But what I did instead is that because the rank Raglan set has so many members, and we have a fairly good idea about the plausibility of their historicity, we can actually do stats on that. So what I use the rank Raglan set as a proxy for the fully mythologized set. And so basically the assumption that I'm operating
Videos go on YouTube. What? Go on YouTube. Well, no carrier.
refute that or to change the probability. If you want to change the frequency, is that you've got to perfect that set or get a bigger set that is a set of that would be relevant. And to give you an example of failing at that, but at least understanding the problem, is Camille Gregor and some people published some papers trying to do this. And it was the only time, I think literally the only time, any academic actually took my argument seriously. Right? Like they're the only ones who actually did what you're actually supposed to do to try and refute my book, or at least part of my book, something in it. So that respect for that, because that's exactly what you have to do. Now you have to do it correctly, and they didn't. But the point is, at least they were thinking in the right direction. What they did is they assembled a set of all the merely mythologized people, and treated Jesus as if he was merely mythologized. But in fact, he's heavily mythologized. So you have to go to the subset, because you're less likely to be historical if you're heavily mythologized than if you're merely mythologized. At least that's what the data shows, and they didn't show any data that indicated otherwise. They did show that when you get the revised heavily mythologized set that they build, they don't explicitly do this, but I show that they effectively accomplish this, that it does change my results, just not for the better, not in favor of historicity. And I show that, and I show the math and how that works out in obsolete paradigm. So if you want to see like their attack on this one particular thing, which is right in the ballpark of what you're talking about and asking about, and I go into how genre analysis works generally for prior probability construction. I use the John Wick set. I actually create a new like myth set to like show how this works in modern, comparing like merely mythologized heroes would be actual mass shooters. And then you have like heavily mythologized heroes or John Wick types, which is a huge genre in Hollywood. Like there's a zillion movies that the righteous mass shooter genre is like a super big trope. And you can see the same thing in the heavily mythologized set. None of them are historical. In the merely mythologized set, lots of them are historical. But Jesus is in the heavily mythologized set. And anyway, show how the math works and all of this there. So if you're interested in that, I really recommend Obsolete Paradigm. I think you'll find it very productive. The second half of chapter 6, it's right on what you're asking about. And that's why I chose that. And I chose it because it exists. Like the Gospels exist and solidly put Jesus in that set. And so that's a big red flag, essentially. So we've got this big piece of information that here's a guy who is heavily mythologized. In fact, the fact that it was rapidly heavily mythologized is worse for historicity, because it's harder to do that with a historical person than a mythical person, unless that was happening simultaneously as it did for Haile Selassie. And I use on the historicity of Jesus, I show the exact same thing with Haile Selassie, Rastafarianism, right? So it's Rastafari. So, but because it was contemporaneous, you can show that Rastafari was historical, even though he was massively mythologized in the Rastafari Bible super fast, really, really rapidly. So anyway, there's a lot of these factors to discuss. But the reason is because it happened after Paul and it happened in the Gospels. And that puts Jesus in a set of people who usually didn't exist. And now I don't know if I should, I so badly want to talk about this other study that I know that is happening. So I have a colleague who's actually working on a serious statistical analysis of this question. And I can't talk about it yet because it needs to go through peer review and be published and stuff. But I'm super excited by it because it does exactly the kind of thing that you're wondering about. is how do you build how do you prove that this works, this idea of heavily mythologized people? Like it's intuitively obvious and empirically demonstrable that
I'm so sorry, that was me.
heavily mythologized people tend not to be historical. So, but one of the things in his findings, that this hopefully someday this will come out. If it does, I'll write about it on my blog. But one of the things of his finding is that historical people who get the same thing happen to them. So if you get rank Raglan features layered onto a historical person, you can see it in the statistics because there's a whole bunch of weird historical stuff that gets in the way and mucks up the data that doesn't exist in the non-historical rank Raglan heroes, which shows that like when you're layering myth on top of a historical person, there's a statistical artifact that you can look at that actually shows that that's happening. And so that would actually be an argument for historicity. Unfortunately, Jesus is in the other set where there's none of that interference. It's like purely mythical in the construction statistically, which suggests that they're making it up entirely out of whole cloth. There's no historical realities that are constraining their mythologization of Jesus or mucking it up or making it more complicated or fuzzy or whatever. Now, I know I just said that and I can't present you the study maybe a few years before it finally comes out, but I was impressed by it. I was convinced by it. The math is great. So, you know, shout out for a secret publication maybe coming someday. I don't know. Did that answer your question? That's the question. I think you've got to bring it back to him.
Yeah. Oh, gotcha.
Sorry.
I figured it out. I am. You can hear him, right, Rick?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Oh, yeah, I fixed it. Everything should be good now. I am the master of technology. Sir,
Well, you are, actually.
yeah. Okay, sir. So, sir, did that answer your question?
Yeah, it's very informative. Thank you for the answer there. It sounds like, if I could just recap, just to make sure I'm tracking kind of the main points, it sounds like what you're saying is that when we look at like what's like contained in Paul's letters about Jesus, since there's nothing putting them like in history, there's no reason to consider the rank Raglan score. But when we're looking at things like the Gospels, it's clearly putting them in history. That's the reason why the rank Raglan score becomes relevant. And then the second big point there was that there's a certain mythologized aspect of Jesus that's heavy as opposed to sort of a merely mythologized figure. Maybe somebody like Alexander the Great might be in the merely category. Is that right?
So that's where I put him in my original study. Gregor and his team convinced me that he belongs in the heavy mythologized set, which has significant mathematical effects. My colleague who's coming out with a study in the future takes him back out again, but for reasons that are too complicated for me to explain until the study comes out. But my overall sense is that Alexander belongs in the superset of heavily mythologized people. My colleague's future thing is going to be a subset of that. And the Gregor set is a bigger set than that, which is including both heavily and merely mythologized people together. So you're like getting like concentric circles of sets, I guess. And so I stick generally with the middle one, the one that I published, but I allowed Gregor's results to change my mind about some data that goes in there. So it affixed some of the data, and that's in Obsolete Paradigm. So that's where I talk about that.
Okay. Well, yeah, I appreciate all your information. Maybe one last final question, and then I'll let Hammy or somebody else talk. Do you think maybe there would be something to say, let's say someone's trying to argue for historicity and they wanted to put Jesus in a reference class of maybe like, apocalyptic prophet or sign prophet or something like that. And they would put him like grouped in with these other kind of apocalyptic preaching type characters, and show that like, that would have a higher prior than the rank Raglan. What would you think about somebody attempting to do something like that?
So this is a problem in general, which is alternative reference class objections, which is a problem in general with all historical studies. It's not just the thing here. I anticipated the problem and tried to like talk about ways that you would solve it in proving history. Like even before I got to the problem of Jesus, just a question of what happens when you have multiple reference classes and they have different priors. Which one do you pick, right? So I talk about how to solve that in proving history in general. But in On the Historicity of Jesus, which is a 2014 study, I have a whole section in there in chapter 6 called the alternative class objection, where I go in detail on exactly the thing you're asking right now. And there I use the example of what I call the Josephine Christs, which is the people that I was talking about with Mario earlier just now, where there's these 6 guys in Josephus who are all Jesus Christs and all do messianic things, and they're presumably historical. So you have a 6-member set. It's kind of small, but you could still say you could get a different prior for historicity and say Jesus is one of these guys too, right? You say, look, so now we got 7. And so you could come up with a prior that's very historicity heavy, right? The problem is that Jesus is also in the rank Raglan set, and these guys aren't, right? So you can't ignore the effect of being heavily mythologized. So you can't use a set of people who are merely mythologized to replace a set that's heavily mythologized, because you have to let the heavy mythologization have its effect. You can't. You're getting narrower. You're starting from a broad set to a narrower set. And in the case of the Josephine Christs, the number of members of the set that is both Josephine Christs and rank Raglan heroes is 0. So you can't do any priors out of that. So you can't get a prior from it. So if the argument is like, yeah, like, but Jesus is also a Josephine Christ, and they're like usually historical. So yeah, that's totally true. Except they're also usually not rank Raglan heroes. And in fact, they're not at all. They're not heavily mythologized at all. So the reason, like, Jesus gets the low prior from being a member of that set, and you can't take that away by putting him on another set. And I prove this mathematically, because the actual way you answer this question when you have multiple sets that he belongs to is that you iterate them. You actually start with one set and then show the effect of the next set on that set and turn the prior into a posterior. And so you updated your priors. And when you do that, you get the same result. And so I show how this works mathematically there in the alternative class objection section. It's in chapter 6 of On the Historicity of Jesus. Now I just realized I've recommended 3 books to you, so I don't know which one you want to go look at. So it depends on which one you're most interested in diving into.
Yeah, I think I can read the chapters. You said chapter 6, Improving History, or sorry.
Yeah, actually, ironically, it's chapter 6 it's in both. So chapter 6, actually it's in all 3. Now I just realized it. So chapter 6 of Proving History does the general theory. Chapter 6 of On the Historicity of Jesus has the section on alternative class objection and shows the math. And then Obsolete Paradigm has the section where it deals with the Gregor, which is the Gregor studies, which is the update that happened after 2014. So that's and they're all in chapter 6 by coincidence of each book.
Okay.
So
I'll definitely read those. John, I appreciate you letting me ask, and Dr. Carey, I appreciate you answering my question. I hope
yeah, good question.
Everyone has a good night.
Thank you.
All right. Yeah, I'm gonna kick you there, sir. Oh shit. Okay. Anyways, so Filthy Heretic, I know that you've got some questions to ask, but Hammy was here next. I do want to address before we get on. So a couple more super chats. We've got this one that says, "Does the mention of an ancient church?" I can't pronounce Greek. In First Clement 47:6 indicate it may be older than 30 CE. Under a Mythicist model, could the worship of Christ Jesus predate Peter's visions?
Yeah, so it's archaion ekklesion is the Greek. No, because even though the English word ancient is etymologically derived from the Greek word archaion, the Greek word does not mean ancient. It just means old or prior or first. So it doesn't actually indicate a length of time. It just means like the old church, as in how it was in the beginning. And Clement is writing, I believe, in the 60s. So he's writing like 30 years. And that means probably at least half of the original members of the church have died of old age by then, because the average life expectancy was 48. You would join as an adult. So half or more of the original joiners would be dead by the time Clement is writing. So his idea is old church. He's thinking, yeah, back when those guys were still alive. But for him, that was only 30 years ago. Like we live so much longer now that we think, well, you would only talk that way if it was like 80 years ago, right? And it's like, yeah, that we would. But them, like, people died like super young. So like whole generations roll faster back then. Like you have a death by attrition so much more quickly. So like their rollover of generations is faster. So their idea of what was old is different, which kind of reminds me. This is unrelated, but it's just a joke that I people always talk about in America. There was a joke by Eddie Izzard, a comedian, who's joking about Americans' perception of time is totally different than British. And, you know, he'd go to like a pub that's been functioning like literally as a business since 1400, you know, it's hundreds of years old, while Americans are telling him, oh, yeah, that's a really old house over there. That's 50 years old. So like our perception of old is different because of how young our country is. And it'd be similar for Clement. Like his perception of how old the church is reflects more the world he's living in, where like people die faster and like, you know, young, what we would consider young would be old to him. So yeah, that's when he says archaion ecclesion, he's talking about the original church, the church from 30 years ago, essentially. He's not talking about ancient in our modern English sense.
Okay. No, I think that a lot of people don't think to take it into context of what the actual words mean there. On those particular cases.
Well, Christian apologists often push that, right? They often put, it says ancient, look. Because that comes up when I think someone like Irenaeus or Tertullian, somebody, no, it had to be Irenaeus. I can't remember who now. Maybe it's Clement. I don't know. Alexandria, the different Clement. Somebody in the late 2nd century says something about old men, and they use ancient men. But unfortunately, that's an amphiboly, which is when you have a grammatical. So do you mean ancient? You mean old as in from a long time ago, or old as in they are old? Mm-hmm. Right? Like that. Like both of those things. The grammar can mean both of those things. So you have to go to the context to see what is the correct way the amphiboly falls. Anyway, so yeah, so like you got to really attend to. But Christians can play games with the words, the way they sound similar or the etymologically related, but English has changed the valence of the word. So if you go back to the original valences, they're different. And this can change all sorts of things in terms of how you understand what they're saying. This is just one example of like a bunch. I have an article on translation where I talk about other cases that aren't in the Bible, like how ambiguities in the Greek or anachronisms from English to Greek mess up even like translations of Homer, arguments that build on like Frontinus and all these other. So I talk about this as a problem when people are careless about this. The ancient words had different valences, and you have to do research to figure out what the valences were before back then, right? So anyway, this is an example of that. You'd have to go study like, well, how was that word used back then? And that trips up a lot of apologists, or a lot of apologists know this and scam you by not telling you what they're doing, one or the other. I've run into both kinds of apologists. Some lie about it and some just don't know about it.
Yeah. So we are getting a healthy queue here of people that would like to, have some discussions. I am accepting people up, but I do ask that people, wait their turn. Just a couple more super chats real quick. So there's one from Resist Oppression that says, "'Cause TBV can't look bad in front of peeps." Thank you so much. And then there's one more before we get to Hammy. I have heard John's comment on how it took 46 years to build the temple matches impressively with the actual building chronology. Any comments? I'm not sure what that's referring to.
Yeah, so I know what they're talking about. I haven't deep dived this because it doesn't really matter. But the idea is so... The idea reflects this notion. So this is in John, the Gospel of John, right? So in the Gospel of John, there's some like scene, and it is fiction. It's a fictional scene, historical fiction, fan fiction, whatever you want to call it. But where Jesus is interacting with some rabbis, and the rabbis say something about the temple. The temple's it's taken 46 years to build this or whatever. And there's a way you could do the math with regard to like Herod when he did his rebuilding program and all of this stuff about like, so you can kind of like date when this scene is supposed to happen based on what the guys in it say. The problem is because it's fiction and it's very easy like reference books were a dime a dozen. Like anybody who was writing in a city, and I guarantee you anybody who's writing the Gospel of John or any version of it, because we have to remember our version of John is a multiply edited redaction. We don't have the original editions of John. But any of those redactions, doesn't matter. They're writing in a city. Every city had a library. The library had tons of reference books. So you could just easily do this kind of thing where you want to put historical color in there. Yeah, you go look and see, do the chronology, do some quick math, and you're like, pop it in there. It's like this is standard education. So it's easy for a fictional writer to make that work. Now I've seemed to recall there's some studies that like question whether the math is even right or whatever. I have no firm position on that, but you can go to Google Scholar and look and see what people have said. But the thing is that that's not evidence of historicity. That's just good fiction. So it's just a fiction author who had a reference book and checked, right? Did some arithmetic, basic, what we would call third grade arithmetic. So yeah, we can't use that as evidence of anything, unfortunately. Now the weird thing is, and I talk about this in On the Historicity of Jesus, is that when it gets to Irenaeus, he confuses this as arguing that Jesus was preaching in the reign of Claudius. So like this is like that Jesus himself was like 46 years old or whatever. So like Christians themselves were not even interpreting this passage correctly. Anyway, I don't know if that answers your question, but that's as much as I know. I know there's a lot more literature about it that you can look into, and it's not something I've deep dived beyond that because I know it's just a fictional story that's probably drawing from reference books to build its narrative.
Awesome answer. Thank you so much for doing that. There are more super chats, but I do want to get to a couple of people. So, Hammy, what's up there, Hammy?
What's going on, bud? What are you up to?
I got Carrier up here. Did you have a question for Carrier?
Yeah, I'm curious about it whenever I talk to mythicists in general. What set you on the mythicist direction?
Wow, that's a big story. Before I answer that, since we're doing the first tech, this is our tech rehearsal, I guess. You started faint and then you became clear. Did you like lean towards a microphone or something just now?
It might have been because I am using a soundboard to plug in an actual microphone into my phone. So I may have leaned a little bit away from speaking directly.
Oh, okay, yeah. No, that's what I wanted to know. I want to know if it was something on our end or your end. Yeah, because right now your audio is great. But when you start, because that happened with another speaker before that they were light, and I didn't know if maybe that was a problem on the mixing on John's end or if it was a...
Well, in certain cases, the problem is that some people use earbuds, and they don't realize that the mic that's getting picked up is from their phone and not the earbud.
Oh, yes. Right. Okay. No, that's good to know. All right. Anyway, tech issue aside, that's great. So your audio is good. Your volume levels are great with us right now. So, remind me your question. Your question was...
Is it good now? Does it look good?
What started you on the mythicist position?
Oh, yeah. Oh, geez, God. How do I do this in a short answer? So I'll start with when I was an anti-mythicist. So that would be the late 90s, very early 2000s, when I was the feedback. Actually, is when I was a feedback editor for the secular web. And I don't know if anybody's old enough to remember when that was the central hub of atheism back then. Like it's almost insignificant now, and most people don't even know about it. But so I was editor. I eventually became the editor-in-chief of that. But I ran I actually got my fame being the snarky feedback editor for the secular web. That's how I became known and popular. And I would rag on mythicists all the time. But of course, the mythicists I would get in feedback would be like the cranks, right? Or the fans of the cranks or whatever. Easy targets, right? Like it's just low-hanging fruit there. And so I would just keep repeating oh yeah, obviously Jesus existed. It's just he wasn't supernatural, etc. All the conspiracy theory stuff is bogus, and you've got all the history stuff wrong. I wrote an article. This led me to write an article because everybody kept citing Kersey Graves at me. This was back then. Kersey Graves was the source people would go to, and the 16 Crucified Saviors from the late 19th century. So I wrote a whole article stop citing this book at me. It's wrong about everything. So I wrote an article a long time ago, and you can still find it. I think it's on the secular web. So anyway, I was a rabid anti-mythicist, and until some people whose judgment I trusted. I think this is important. Like, I trusted their judgment. They weren't just randos, and it was more than one person. So independently, I was getting several people saying, you know, you need to read Earl Doherty's The Jesus Puzzle, because it's not like this other stuff. He's not making any of the stupid arguments they're making. He seems to be making a pretty good, sophisticated argument. It's different. What he's doing is different. And I can't, and they would tell me, like, I can't tell if he's like right or wrong. He looks right to me. I don't know. And so I said, okay, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll read that book on because, you know, I trust your judgment that it's worth at least reading, even if it's terrible. And I wrote a review of it, and I treated my review as if by the time I'd finished it, I'd realized, like, this is not a bad draft dissertation. Like, if he had gone to do a PhD at, like, Columbia, for example, and this was his first draft of his dissertation, I'd say, okay, you're almost there. Like, you got some things you got to fix. But this is actually a decent dissertation. Like, if you fix all the problems, it would be passable, and it would be good enough to get you a PhD. So anyway, I treated it like that. So I talked about how, like, yeah, okay, this isn't bad. Here's some problems with it that you need to fix. And at that point, I was like, well, I'd never heard this argument before. There's nothing, like, if I strip away all the things that were errors, the things that I found that were wrong or over-argued or, like, bad inferences or whatever, there was still meat left over. And I was like, oh, that's actually, I don't know. And I've never heard anyone respond to this argument. So at that point, I was kind of like agnostic. I was like, oh, wait a minute, like, why? No one's addressed this. And so I was kind of at sea at that point. I was like, well, I don't know. Like, the consensus says one thing. This is not a bad argument against the consensus, but everybody's ignoring it. So I didn't know what to make of it. So I wasn't a mythicist yet. I was willing to doubt historicity. But I was at that point where I was like, well, I'm not sure. So, and I even like published some things around then where I'm like, well, I have a footnote. Well, even if Jesus didn't exist, blah, 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 and then go on to just assume Jesus existed for the rest of the argument. And when 2008 happened, I don't know how many people know this story. And I tell it in the first, like the preface or the first section of on the historicity of Jesus. When the economy collapsed in 2008, that's also when I got my PhD awarded. They put a freeze on hires. So now you're a freshly minted history PhD. There are no jobs for you and probably will not be for years. Yay. I also was kind of burned out on seeing the inside politics of how humanities departments works in college. I was not excited about being a professor anymore. It's a shitty job. That's a whole other discourse I can give you. But anyway, I went to my fans and I kind of did this was before GoFundMe existed. And I kind of did my own GoFundMe. And I said, if everybody can raise money to pay down my student debts, which is like 20 grand at the time, which is not a lot of student debt for most folks. I'll apply my PhD to any subject you want. And unanimously, they said, historicity, do like full postdoc research project on Doherty's thing and tell us, does it hold up or not? And they raised the money and I did it. So that took about 6 years. And that was the process where I followed the procedure that you would do if you're doing a real postdoc program. You start with method, and then you do a full literature review and all that stuff. And so I followed that. As I followed through that process, everything I had been told by my peers and by mainstreamers, everything that was claimed to be the quote unquote the consensus, fell apart. Every single time I checked a thing, it fell apart. That, like, there's no stilts under this. Like there's no feet under this. Like you make this assertion, and I check it, and it turns out to be false. And I started to get pissed off, right? I was like, oh my God, the field is like just asserting a bunch of things that fall apart the moment you check them. Why is nobody checking them? And so that led to On the Historicity of Jesus, as well as Proving History that came out in the middle of the, and several journal articles, peer-reviewed journal articles that came out on this. That I produced. But yeah, by the end of that, I was like, I don't see historicity be plausible because the consensus is ill-founded. It's improperly founded on false beliefs that people just keep confidently asserting but aren't checking. And when you check them, they fall apart. Anyway, that resulted in the book. And in the 10 years since, that's just gotten worse and worse. Like I said, okay, I'm going to publish this book. My hope is that we'll have a countermanding study defending historicity. That'll be the best peer-reviewed defense of historicity, responding to mine, and then we'll have the 2 books, and I'll be able to tell people, yeah, if you want to know, read this book and read that book, and then you can make your own judgment call. But nobody came out with a countermanding study at all. So not only was there no monograph, there was no journal article. All there were these dishonest, ultra-brief book reviews that were just apologetic bullshit. And that's it. For 10 years, no one has developed a response to Historicity of Jesus. So that's why I'm kind of, and that to me proves that, well, I guess the consensus isn't defensible because they've had 10 fucking years to defend it. And all they give me is garbage, like obvious, like demonstrable garbage. And this is the point. This is chapters 3 and 4 of Obsolete Paradigm, where I'm talking about, like, here are the responses, how terrible they are. Something that was obviously true should be defendable with better stuff than this. Like, there should be no reason for these terrible arguments, much less to have only these terrible arguments. So anyway, that's why that's the shortest version I can tell of how I ended up a Mythicist today.
No, yeah.
I love how I love the long the it's still long, but you're like, but yeah, you know, this is the quick version.
Anything I said.
Do you have 7 hours? Do you have 7 hours?
Right. Yeah, kind of, right? Because then I could go through everything. What happened to Q theory? What happened? You know, it's like I could go on and on. No, if I had just quickly done it in like 30 seconds, they would leave so many questions. Like, what do you mean you were a historicist and aren't anymore? Like, anyway. So yeah, no, I kind of have to give the backstory for people to understand my transformation over time was in result of being pushed, having my nose pushed in the evidence. Like, God damn it, go check the freaking evidence. Stop citing the consensus. I'm like, all right, God damn it, I'll do it. And then I did, and sure enough, I am now. That's why I am where I am now.
All right. Thank you, Hammy, for that quick question.
Yeah. And John, as always, it's great to always see you.
Yeah. No, thank you so much for coming up and everything. So let me go ahead and I'm going to kick you down there, Hammy. There we go. Okay. We do have LB Hayes over there on the Video Ninja, but I do want to get through a couple more people over here on the TikTok. Next up, we've got Filthy Heretic, who had a couple questions maybe. What's up there, Filthy Heretic? How you doing?
Hi, Neil. Hi, Dr. Carey. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yep, we got you.
Okay, that's awesome. I'm so excited to speak to you guys. It's such an honor to speak to Dr. Carrier. So my questions surround, well, first off is Mark and the Pauline epistles, and the second is mystery cults. So for the first question, in page 528 of On the Historicity of Jesus, before we talk about epistles from the pillars, I might be completely butchering your argument here, and I'm so sorry if I am, please correct me, but you seem to be implying that the verses that scholars usually use to defend Jesus as a historical person are ambiguous, and this ambiguity is a problem for historicists, because we wouldn't expect this ambiguity, right? My question is that you say that Mark is a Pauline gospel, right? You don't say this in the book, but you have said it on your blog, and I completely agree.
Yeah.
And you also think it was written soon after the death of Paul, maybe like kind of around a decade after 75 AD, based on the parallels between Jesus and Ananias. So because they're so close together, I've taught before, maybe a potential objection would be that, you know, shouldn't we interpret Paul through Mark if it's ambiguous and it wouldn't require this historization model that you propose?
So, okay, if I understand, wait, did I lose okay, am I still here? Can people hear me?
No, yeah, we got you.
Okay, the audio changed in my headphones. So let me see if I understand this. So the idea is that if Mark was reifying Paul, or why would Mark reify Paul? Maybe that's your question. So like, if Mark is totally Pauline, why did he historicize Jesus? Is that your question?
Yeah, pretty much. Or like, if Paul is ambiguous on this issue, shouldn't we see Mark as representative of the Pauline school because he's...
Yeah, okay, I see where you're going with that. Yeah, okay. Yeah, so this ties in with the question asked earlier about the rank Raglan role of this, the mythologization. And I do talk about this On the Historicity of Jesus. I can't remember if I also bring it up in Obsolete Paradigm, but the trend was so this is the euhemerism point, which it's element 46, maybe somewhere around 46 in chapter 5 of On the Historicity of Jesus, somewhere around there, where I talk about euhemerism, where it was the standard of the time to take celestial gods or woodland mystical spirits or whatever and turn them into historical heroes, like put them into history, make them kings or princes of particular places and so on. Even Zeus, like they even historicized Zeus, made him a king on an island somewhere in history, and he was deified, and everybody forgot that he was a historical guy. There was a trend to do this. It was actually the fashion to do this. And in Jesus from Outer Space, I use the example of Osiris because this happened to him, where Osiris starts as a celestial god, but by the time that we get to the classical era, he's been converted into an actual historical pharaoh. And in fact, there are historians of that time trying to date him, trying to figure out, like, well, when was he? Like, where do you fit him into the chronology of the pharaohs of Egypt? And now we actually have pretty good records of the pharaohs of Egypt, so we know there was no Osiris, and this never happened. But the trend was to turn these guys into historical people and put them into history, and then use that story to allegorize everything they did and everything they taught. And we're very lucky to have Plutarch writing a book to his friend who's a priestess of Osiris. It's kind of like mansplaining, which is kind of funny. It's typical kind of like the sexism of the time, where he wrote this elaborate book. Well, let me show you all the cool things I learned about your religion and send you this book about your religion that suddenly I know more about than you. But anyway, he does this, and he's got his own little like pet peeves and stuff. And he goes through all the different theories of religion at the time. And he goes through like allegorism and euhemerism. He mentions, he goes through all these things, and he himself settles on demonic theory, which is a whole side thing. And I talk about it in Jesus from Outer Space. But what you get from this is he mentions the fact, which he's writing to a priestess of Osiris, so he can't be wrong about it, is he says that the real myth that priestesses and priests know, and amongst each other, is that Osiris was never historical, that he descends below the moon, becomes incarnate, and is killed by Typhon, their version of Set, or the version of Satan that they had in that model, just below the moon, and then he resurrects to glory and goes back. And in the Osiris cult, this happens every year because they had cyclical time, and the Jews had linear time, so it happened only once. But that's totally explicable. But the model is that then they wrote the stories about Osiris being a king on Earth, and Plutarch says that was meant to trick outsiders into not understanding the truth. And to convey the truths through allegories, so like the things that happen aren't really true, but you're supposed to understand the meaning of them, and insiders will be taught the meaning. Anyway, so that's in Plutarch. We have some other examples of this, like Origen, the church father. He actually talks about this as how Christians do things, which is kind of giving away the game that the Gospels are like this, that they're meant to be literal for lower-ranking members of the church because they won't believe and understand the fact that it's all allegory for something else, etc. And then in Obsolete Paradigm, I have a whole chapter showing that actually there's a lot of writing that's really attacking the people who are saying it's all allegory as immoral, vile, like Epstein Island people. Get away from them. Don't listen to anything they say. So there's this push, there's this war in the church between the allegorists and the historicists, or I should say historicizers, really, because they're trying to turn this into an actual historical thing. And then shunning or banning and defaming the people who tell them that it's not historical. Anyway, that's the context, right? So that's why. So when Marx decides to write an allegory for putting Jesus in history to allegorize everything, he's doing exactly what every other religion of the time did, including Osiris cult. They did exactly the same thing. And then he takes he'll take, for instance, Paul's chapter 13 in Romans, about basically you're supposed to follow the government because God supports the government and whatever. Yeah, he's got this elaborate, stupid reason why you should not rebel against the state, right? Just be a good lamb. And then Mark turns that into a story about Jesus doing a pithy thing about the coin of Caesar, right? Yes, you should pay taxes because his face is on it. It's his money anyway. Give it back to him. That's dumb. But anyway, that's the myth. That's a classic example of what authors of the time were taught, how to tell a story to convey a message. So your message is, yeah, you should still pay your taxes. Don't be a rebel. And so you basically have this. He creates a story about Jesus telling people in a village, here's the thing, here's the coin, yada yada. That's exactly how myths were constructed. Schools of the time literally taught you how to do that. That was like the whole. There are several scholars have pointed this out, like Brody and McDonald and stuff have done surveys of the educational literature that show this is how you were taught to write stories, exactly like that. And Mark kind of tells you this in Mark 4. So in Mark 4, he has Jesus is telling these parables, right? About, oh, there's this guy and he did this thing and something happened. And then the disciples are taking him back. Like, what are you talking about? Who's this guy? What do you mean? And he says, oh, come on. Like, are you guys idiots? Like, that's just allegory. Like, you're not supposed to, if you believe the literal story, you're an outsider and you're going to be damned. But if you understand the meaning of the story, then you're an insider and you'll be saved. And I tell these parables so that they won't convert, right? Or they won't turn and be forgiven, right? It's like, so you have to join us to be told the true meaning. And then he turns around and says, oh yeah, the parable is not a real guy or whatever. It symbolizes this whatever moral message, right? So he's kind of like telling you that the surface literalism is bogus. And if you treat it as if it's literal and true, you're one of the outsiders who's going to be damned. And if you understand what it's allegory for, like if you get the secret meaning of it, it's not really a historical guy running around. It's something else. Then you're an insider and you will be saved. And so anyway, that's like Mark practically says this, right? So that's the model of it. As the Gospels proceed, they become more and more historicizing. Like they drop this little message of Mark, they cut it. They add more details that make it look more historical. And then by the time you get to John, he's outright saying, you are damned if you think this is myth. This is freaking 100% literally true, and you're going to fucking hell if you don't believe it. And you're like, wow, you're protesting a bit much, right? Like the insistence that our redaction of John has that you better fucking believe that this is literally true is itself evidence that there were Christians going around telling you that it wasn't, right? So anyway, that's the path that it took. And I talk about that more in Obsolete Paradigm. I don't know if that answers your question. Hopefully it does.
Yeah.
It's a bit long-winded.
Oh, sorry. I'm really sorry, Neil. I know that I'm taking up time. Could I ask one more question on that before I get to mystery cults, or will I get straight to that?
You can ask one more question as long as it's quick. And by quick, I mean half the time it takes to answer that last one.
Yeah, I'll be quick in my answer too.
Fair enough. Yeah. So, so you say in the book that, like, you know, theoretically, there's like, in theory, it doesn't have to take any time between a celestial Jesus and a historical narrative, right? Like there is a bunch of time between, myths of a celestial Osiris and then a historical Osiris. But like if Mark is writing to a community of Pauline Christians in Rome, would they not like be a bit skeptical of Mark's historization of Jesus, or would they like recognize his practice?
Yeah, good question. That ties right back into my previous answer, which is that the insiders, like Mark's writing for an insider audience, they would immediately know that this is allegory, right? Because they already know this. It's, hey, look, I wrote this great allegory, just like the Osiris cult has. They make him a pharaoh or whatever that allegorizes all the supernatural weird space shit. Here you go. And the intention is to hide it from the outsiders who will think it's a real story about an actual Galilean guy running around. So that's how. So his audience immediately knows that this is a fiction, like let's call it an edifying fiction, right? It's like saying, Andor is a really great story about fascism and rebellion. And there's a lot of historical truths about fascism and rebellion in Andor. And you can learn a lot of things about human nature and government and how you should behave and how self-sacrifice matters. All this stuff. But there's no Andor. There's no galaxy far away. Like, it's all fake. But if you think it's not, like if you're like the Galaxy Quest aliens who think it's real, then you're the outsiders, right? And what happens is that's the audience Mark is writing for. Now, over time, decades pass, and more, there are some Christians who are insisting that it's real, and they're fighting with the Christians who are saying, no, you moron, it's freaking allegory. And then eventually the historicists win. They end up with more money, more members, and they kick the ass of the Mythicists shut them out, and they don't grow as big. They don't end up with the elites that are joining. They don't get the elite capture from the Elon Musks of the 2nd century, and then you end up with, the Donald Trumps of the 4th century selling historicism and banning everybody else. So, like, that's kind of the story of that. Anyway, that's my short answer. The long answer is answered in my books and stuff.
Sorry, I know how much time I just took there. Can I ask a question about mystery cults, or would you like to get through some more people?
Let me get through some more people. If we work through everybody and you're still around, feel free to request up to ask again about
that's a good way to do it.
About it. Yeah.
That's okay. Thank you guys so much. It's such an honor to speak to you, Mr. Carrier. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. It was good questions. All the questions have been good today, actually. This is
I know. This has been great. So let's see. I'm gonna drop you down there, Filthy. You have a good night. Thank you so much. So I do kind of want to bounce back and forth between the Video Ninja queue and the TikTok queue. JC, we will get to you here in just one second, but I did want to unmute LB Hayes over here on Video Ninja. LB, are you there? Hello, LB? LB? Oh, we can't hear you there, LB. I don't know what's going on.
Mic muted, perhaps.
Says oh crap! I hit reconnect mic, and maybe they'll come back. Let's see. We do have. I'm so sorry about that, LB. I hope you can come back here in a second. We do have Tom. Tom, are you there?
Hello, is this?
Hello.
Am I the right Tom?
Yes, Tom.
Hey.
Tom P. over on Video Ninja. Hey.
Yeah. And everybody can hear me fine? I'm on Linux, so that I don't know if the process was a little more complicated.
Oh, no. So. You're coming through fine. We got
okay.
we do have a lot of people requesting up, so just if you can just make it like maybe one, maybe two questions.
Yeah. I just, and maybe this is already going. I don't know if this is controversial or not, but it's something I've been kind of thinking going over Carrier's work. I've read all your books. I'm about halfway through Obsolete Paradigm, but cool. Is that I don't think Christianity has anything to do with Judea. I just think Jesus is based off of Scipulus and Dionysus, and the Jewish influence came later. Like imagine this scenario. If somebody in LA wrote a story about a man climbing buildings and shot webs through his wrist in New York, and let's call this guy Man Spider, then sometimes later, made that guy Jewish. It's like this far off tale of this far off land. But then people, 100 years later, it's like, oh, I want this guy to be real. And I know this is highly speculation, and I think there's some stuff against it, Galatians and Romans, but kind of talk about where could this just been a tale, a story, a fable about somebody going to a far off. I mean, I could even think there could have been a story of like Dionysus going to a far off land, but I haven't done enough research in that. I don't know if there's if that's there.
So, okay. So there's a lot there.
Oh, sorry.
It's close. So first of all, to argue that, you would have to argue that all the Pauline letters are fake.
Right. Yeah.
And as I mentioned at the top of this, there are serious scholars arguing that today. So that's not a crank position. So I have some blog articles on Nina's book, and also I have one on Vincent and Trobish. Anyway, so that's it's not out of the mainstream anyway. I don't agree with that, but still, it's not ridiculous. And if you buy that, especially if you buy like Vincent's view, then it's possible. So that what you're talking about is like you have these Greeks or Romans or whatever, Hellenists, who are trying to create their own Jewish hero, and are doing a pretty good job of researching the Judaism aspect and putting it in. And this isn't implausible because there was a whole movement of what are called God-fearers and proselytes, but God-fearers are the ones who didn't convert. but who are super excited and really interested in the exoticism of Judaism, right? So like you had all these people who are super interested in Egyptian religion. Ooh, it's foreign and cool and neat. But you had the same kind of people who are like into like Judaism for the same reasons. Like, oh, this weird, interesting religion. It's so wise, like it's that kind of like condescending. You might picture all the like woo metaphysicians in Taos or New Mexico or whatever. The Native American religion, so awesome. And then they come up with this whole like religion that they claim is like Native American, and it has kind of like sort of some Native American sort of stuff in it, but isn't really. And the actual Native Americans around them are like
right.
No, but which happens, right? So it really happens.
Yeah.
And this would agree with like even Robin Faith Walsh kind of, she doesn't go there, but she kind of implies something like this.
Yeah.
Yeah, she kind of implies something like this. I mean, I think she's being careful to not go there. Like she's hinting at it. But anyway, so I don't think it's implausible. I don't agree with it. I don't think it's correct.
Right.
And the reason is I am convinced of the Pauline letters. But even trying to think like even Matthew. So let's take Matthew. So Mark is clearly, he's well educated in Judaism, but he might not be Jewish himself. This is another thing people don't understand. Like, it was really easy to be well informed about Judaism without being a Jew. Not only because you could be a God-fearer, but even if you weren't, like, there's Jews everywhere. You could just go talk to them, right? Like, you can learn all kinds of things about Judaism from just, like, having buddies who are Jewish. And then, of course, you have all every major city has a library, and so there's all sorts of research you can do. You can read the Septuagint, which is why you notice the Gospels are super reliant on the Septuagint. Luke is a classic example. Luke even borrows the style of writing of the Septuagint. Like it's anyway. So yeah, it's totally possible for that to happen. But I find like there's the Gospel of Matthew, and then Revelation is another important example, and I think the letters of Paul, the ones that are authentic. And there's a big difference between, for instance, the authentic letters of Paul and like the pastoral letters. Like the pastorals are like right in the galaxy of what you're talking about. It's like this is someone pretending to be sort of pseudo-Jewish, but it's totally not. And you can see that. You can see that in 2 Peter. Clearly, whoever wrote 2 Peter is like sort of trying to pretend to be Jewish, but isn't really. Whereas whoever wrote 1 Peter is super Jewish. And so you can see that. And I think like when you see like Matthew, there's an author, his name is Sim, S-I-M. I cite him, one or two of his books on the historicity of Jesus. And he does this whole study of the Jewish Christian movement. And it was not popular. It did not grow. It got suppressed, kicked out. It ended up being like outside the Roman Empire, like was the only movement left, essentially. We see it in Epiphanius. He's saying, yeah, they live up in the hills, somewhere across the border, these like weirdos called Nestorians. So there was this sort of original Jewish movement, and Paul talks about it. Like he's like, Paul's trying to like unify Judaism and Gentiles, but he's making clear that this is novel for him, right? Like it was super Jewish before that, totally or Jewish originated, Jewish run, and they would only bring Gentiles in if they converted to Judaism, which was a thing that happened a lot back then. This is people don't realize. Conversion to Judaism was a thing. So that's why I'm convinced that it started in Judaism. Paul let a bunch of Gentiles in, smoothed over the Jewish stuff. And then by the time you get to Mark, and certainly you see this already, the transitional fossil is Hebrews. So like when Paul's writing, he's saying, yeah, like the Jews are cool. They're saved by their Old Testament, like their Old Covenant. It's a shitty covenant though, but anyway, they'll be fine. But we don't need that. We'll be rescued without that. You don't need the old, you can have this new covenant. It's even better and yada, yada. And so he's not basically saying don't be Jewish. He's just saying you don't have to be Jewish. Right. By the time you get to Hebrews, which I think is in the 60s, so it's not long after Paul's died, Hebrews is arguing you don't even need to be Jewish. In fact, if you ever were Jewish or are Jewish now, fucking stop and join us and not do that, right? So that you see the split already happening. So by the time Mark gets there, it's already happening. Now Matthew's pushing back. Matthew is written by the Jewish faction, is very angry about what Mark is doing. And he's trying to re-Judaize Jesus and say, fuck you, damn outsiders. You're appropriating our culture. And so he writes his own gospel to sort of remake Jesus as a Jewish hero. And it's very clear that whoever wrote that is a Hellenized Jew. They're absolutely a diaspora Jew. Anyway, that's how I see it developing. So that's why I don't buy into like that version of what you were talking about. But I don't think it's implausible to explore that hypothesis, and there are serious scholars exploring it today.
And it's highly speculative. So I don't,
that's also right.
Yeah. The only reason I feel like it is like it seems like it's all in Greece. Like you're talking about, like, what is the information that actually puts it in the Judea area? Is there any like?
Yeah, it seems it's very clear to me Christianity was never successful in Palestine.
Yeah. Okay.
Like just never, and I think it just only picked up in the diaspora. So first, the big it had maybe a few Palestinians who were into it, and we see that Paul refers to the saints, the holy ones in Jerusalem, and the Jewish members that hated him and fought him all the time in Jerusalem and stuff. So it had a Jewish movement, and it stuck around for a while, but it was never popular. It only took off, being super popular, because Paul figured out a way to tap the God-fearer market, which was a huge market. So these are all Hellenists, so Romans, Greeks, smattering of other cultures, but they weren't converting. They weren't becoming proselytes, mainly because it meant cutting off a piece of your penis and following a bunch of dumb rules no one wanted to follow. Like, you have to give up bacon. Come on, man. And so they liked Judaism, but they didn't like the genital mutilation, and they didn't like the giving up bacon and all that. And what does Paul do? He says, hey, what if you could be Jewish and not do any of that?
Yeah.
And so they're like, that's amazing. That's absolutely what I wanted. And so he had a huge market to tap. And so I think Paul flooded the church with Gentiles, and it was all over after that, right? Like that, the church, like that was where all the money was. That's where all the influence was. All your upper class people who are joining are all going to be Hellenists. So like by the time you get to the 70s, especially after the Jewish War, when now it's super not popular to be Jewish.
Yeah.
It's super, here you've got this great package sale where like, you don't have to be Jewish. You could steal all the great things about Judaism, not be Jewish, not pay the tax to the Jupiter temple that happened after the war, right? Like it's just anyway. Just point being is that the Gentile wing of the church just massively took over, that's why it's the only version that we see, right? Like the original version didn't survive.
Yeah, and you've gone over this too. That I think it's because of like the transition. The Roman, after all the civil wars and everything, that I think people were looking for something new. So like that, I think that also helped too, where this whole system's dying. Here's these, outskirt, little society.
And I think also that happened on the pagan side too. So I talk about this in chapter 18 of my book, Not the Impossible Faith.
Oh yeah.
Which is that in the 3rd century, you had this 50-year-long civil war. You have mass losses, like mass casualties of like you're just turning over legions over and over. Just everybody's dying. Like, and you have this, and basically, and then you have the collapse of the fiduciary economy. So you've got the Great Depression. You got a 50-year-long civil war and the Great Depression. So people are like, no, and you have things like Mithraism had captured the legions. So it was kind of like the religion of the legions, not solely, but it was popular for that. But after 50 years of that failure and death and all that, like you're kind of thinking like, I don't know, Mithraism doesn't seem to be a successful religion because like everybody who's worshiping Mithras is getting killed. So why should I be a Mithraist, right?
Yeah.
So, and I think it's the same thing. And you had other emperors, wannabes that tried to be emperor for a little while and got assassinated. Mm-hmm. They tried different religions. They tried to make a religion, an imperial religion. They tried to do what Constantine did. And you have Elagabalus is trying to do it with Baal cult, and you've got Aurelius Victor trying to do it with Sol Invictus, but they get assassinated super fast, so their plan doesn't work. And so you have all of these religions that are, and in the perception of the public are failing. And so when Constantine comes in, I got to pick a religion to win this civil war and stabilize the empire. Who do I pick? And I think when he's looking around, he's saying like, there's only one religion. Nobody's like, it's completely failed everybody because the legions weren't like counting on it and then getting wiped out, right? There's no emperor who picked it and got killed, so clearly that god is no good. And who spans both sides of the empire? Who's got an existing network that I can use to influence the public, right? And who can I do that? Who hates my enemy So, right, so like I'm gonna fight a civil war with this guy. I'm gonna pick his enemies because those are the people I want. Yeah, it's Christianity, and so that's how Christianity got picked. I think it was like because of what you're talking about. Is like all the other religions were perceived as failing.
Yeah.
Constantine threw his bet behind this new religion, and the only thing that happened that changed history is that he just failed to get assassinated, and that was basically the only reason that we're Christian, that the world is Christian today, is because no one succeeded to kill him in his ring, and that's it, right? That's the only fucking reason.
And wasn't Constantine from the East as well too? So like he would have known about those religions and stuff in the East, like there.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. Okay.
And it's worth pointing out that Constantine was a smart ruler. Like he was a freaking Mussolini asshole, but he was a smart ruler, in that he did not say paganism is now false. Right, he realized he still had to rule over non-Christians, and so he used Christianity, but also and he did take money from pagan temples and gave it to Christian churches. So he's what do you call, like, putting his finger on the scale of religious competition, right? He's picking winners and losers, like the Republicans say you're not supposed to do, but he's still treating with respect the other religions. And it's not until Theodosius, about 60 years later, that you have one of his successors finally say, no, fuck it, paganism is illegal, everybody be Christian or fuck off. But that's the timeline, right? So that's how that happened.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you so much, Tom, for coming up and asking your questions and everything like that. I do need to kind of keep the queue moving though, so I hope you'll understand. Yeah. All right, Tom, you have a good night. I'll see you later. Okay.
You too.
All right, there we go. Okay, so I do want to address maybe a couple of super chats before we get to JC Rose over there on the TikTok queue. Mike NC over there on Video Ninja, you'll be next when we flip back over to Video Ninja, just so that you're aware. We've got this super chat right here that says, if we, this comes from Oceanus Helios, if we had definitive physical evidence of Jesus's historicity, it would be broadcast around the world. We'd be able to visit it. It would be hermetically sealed. We would be shown every bit every day. I do think that they would be very vocal about definitive evidence, right?
Yeah. Well, they shill the fake evidence, like the fake ossuary. I mean, it's not a fake ossuary. It's I'm fairly certain that the name Jesus is forged on it, but there's the James ossuary that they try to push on this. Yeah, no, I mean, obviously, I think because you have this with the Dead Sea Scrolls, right? You could go, and they are literally hermetically sealed. They're in those vacuum glass boxes that you can't touch the oxidized scrolls and stuff. Yeah, if we had that kind of stuff, that's exactly what would be the case. You could go check it out. It's a different question for the mainstream Jesus or the supernatural Jesus. If it's the supernatural Jesus, we should be able to go to his tomb and talk to his angel, right? I mean, angels live forever and never get bored, supposedly. So they could just sit there. Like the angel that sat by the tomb and said, yeah, paralyze the guards. I guess it was two angels. But anyway, they could just still be there, right? You could just go talk to them, right? Like if there was a real Jesus and that really happened, why couldn't the angels just be there? Like just hang out, take questions, have a line, whatever. Here's a cute, you got to move on. You're taking too much time.
Yeah.
They could. Anyway, a supernatural Jesus, it was super provable if it were true. The mundane Jesus is a different question. You'd have to be lucky to have the kind of evidence that you would need to be smoking gun on that. But we could have. I talk about what we could have that would be convincing in Obsolete Paradigm. I have a couple chapters, 3 chapters, where I go into detail. If we had this, and it's completely believable that you could have, then we'll be guaranteed that Jesus existed, right? And I even compare, I do chapter, actually 4 chapters, because I compare other historical people and say, why are we so certain Socrates existed? In fact, why are we so certain, which is not very certain at all, that Apollonius of Tyana existed? And I go through, I show, this is the stuff we have for them. It's pretty good. Why don't we have that for Jesus? That's the question that people need to seriously ask. And anyway, show that. That's another example of taking historicists and pushing their nose into the evidence. Like, okay, where's this evidence? And why are you so confident? And you don't have any of this evidence. Like, why are you so confident? It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah. So that's in reaction to Oceanus.
Yeah, and then one more super chat before we get to JC real quick. South Galatian asked, every time we're forced to speak about Jesus's brother, mother, and father, they should be forced to explain Paul's silence in high Christology, 1 Corinthians 1:22, 1 Corinthians 9:1, and Romans 13:1 through 3.
Yeah. I understand. Yeah.
Yep. Okay, awesome. Thank you so much for those super chats there. And now JC over there on the Tickety Toggety. What's up there, JC? I forgot to do this for a couple of the others, but JC, are you over 18? And what are your pronouns?
Yeah, I'm 24 and he, him.
Okay, cool. Awesome. So what have you got for us there, JC?
So I heard from one of my friends that you actually hold that First Peter may have been written by Peter, and that's very plausible. Is that true?
Yeah.
And if so, why do you think that? And I understand that's probably a very involved question.
No,
it requires a long
it
answer,
really
but-
is. Yeah, no, it really isn't. And it's a good question because I didn't used to. I just went along. This is another example. I just went along with the consensus, right? Like, well, everybody says it's a forgery. Okay, I'll just use that. And as I mentioned earlier in the show, I did adopt a lot of consensus, as many consensus positions as I could on the historicity of Jesus, simply to not complicate the theory, right? So, like, I didn't want to, like, try to have to defend a million front war, like, reduce the number of front lines that I'm fighting on. So I just took the assumption that 1st and 2nd Peter, even though we do know, and this is mainstream, that whoever did write 1st Peter and 2nd Peter were different people. So, like, that's a mainstream conclusion, is that whoever wrote 1 and 2 Peter, they're different people. And so definitely 2nd Peter is forged because it refers to 1st Peter. So there's no way that 2nd Peter can be written by real Peter. Now, that's the way I was. I was just at that position for a while. And so, yeah, whatever. There's no reason to believe 1st Peter. And I do mention it on the Historicity of Jesus. I mentioned the fact that it is kind of weird that we think 1st Peter is fictional because it kind of looks mythicist. It's weird because if it was a forgery, you can kind of explain it. But if it was written by Peter, this is a guy who's saying that he learned about the crucifixion in Scripture. Like, he never mentions meeting Jesus. He only knows about Jesus from Scripture in Revelation. He has one brief mention of Revelation. It's mostly driving from Scripture. And that's the only reason. Like, why would Peter say that if Jesus existed? So if 1st Peter was an actual authentic book from Peter, the Peter that we're talking about, that would be really good evidence against historicity. Like, it would almost be a slam dunk against historicity. So the problem is that we can't be sure that it's authentic. So you mentioned that I am convinced. I would put it above 50%. I'm not, like, convinced certain that it's authentic, but I do think it's above 50% chance that it's authentic. But the consensus scholars are not with me on that. So I can't, like, say this is a slam dunk, I proved it. And I think, like, there's still more work to be done on this. And the reason is there was an author who convinced me. Well, convinced me that it's plausible, that it's historical. I'm still planning. I haven't fully read her book, and I have to, like, it's just a couple books, but there's one that I'm going to look at. I have to fully read it, and, like, because it's a mathematical argument, and I've got to, like, vet it and stuff. And I'm going to blog about it eventually. It's on my list of things to do. But I've only, like, skimmed it, and I have a sense of what her argument is. And it sounds like a good argument. And it is. So what she does is she shows that there is a stylometric similarity between Hebrews and 1 Peter. Not such as to suggest they're written by the same people. That's not her argument. Her argument is that it looks like Hebrews is dependent on 1 Peter. Now, that's probably a weak argument, or it's not a slam dunk argument. It's a bit of a complicated, convoluted, I don't know if this is true argument. But if it's true, if she's right, and if you could somehow prove this, that Hebrews is based on 1 Peter, as I point out on the Historicity of Jesus, And I pointed out in a blog on First Clement that I did, you can go check my dating of First Clement. Hebrews is 100% pre-war. So everybody tries to date it after the war. That's not sustainable. I think it can't possibly be post-war. It's got to be 60s. So it's got to be post-Paul, pre-war. So it's got to be early 60s AD. The evidence for that is super strong. I don't know why anybody actually disagrees with it anymore. I've looked at their arguments. I don't get it. I don't know why are they trying to convince themselves that it's post-war. It doesn't make any sense. It's obviously pre-war. So if Hebrews is pre-war and Hebrews is using First Peter as a source, that means First Peter was circulating when Paul was still walking around, probably when Peter was still alive, or it's not sure. It's possible it got circulated shortly after he died, during Clement, when Clement was writing, First Clement. It seems very unlikely that certainly that Peter would never write First Peter unless Jesus didn't exist. Like, you go read the letter, you can say, like, this is a mythicist. If this is his top disciple, he's a fucking mythicist, right? And it's very unlikely that a forger couldn't get away with forging stuff when Peter was still alive, because then everybody would know it was fake. Peter would say, this is fucking fake, and Paul would be warning people about the fake letter of Peter, and so on. So would First Clement, and so on. So if they faked it like shortly after his death, let's say he dies and someone fakes it immediately, oh, Peter wrote this letter, it still would not fly, because people would know, like, if Jesus existed, people would know Peter was his bud, right? Like, hung out with him and all this stuff. And they're like, there's no way this guy would write this letter. Like, where's all the buddy stuff? Like, where's all the hanging out and having dinner and all that stuff? Sharing a house in Capernaum or Bethsaida or wherever. Like, where's all that stuff? Why is he only getting stuff from Scripture? Clearly, Peter can't have written this, right? So, like, a forgery wouldn't work. It would not. The First Peter cannot be a pre-war forgery. It would fail so obviously that no one would attempt it. It would be a dumb thing to even try. So, in my view, even if it's a forgery, if it's a pre-war forgery, it's by someone who has no idea that there's a historical Jesus. And no one knows that Peter knew a historical Jesus, so no one would call it out as a fake letter. So that's my point, is that if Hebrews is based on First Peter and Hebrews is pre-war, which I'm very positive it is, then First Peter is, proves the non-historicity of Jesus. And I think it is possible still to be forged in that scenario. It's just that it's more likely authentic in that scenario. And there's one other piece to this story, and I talk about this in Obsolete Paradigm, which is that the main reason, and pretty much the only reason ever given for why First Peter is a forgery by mainstreamers, is that Peter was an illiterate fisherman and couldn't have written it. And that is a wildly wrong argument. Like, it's just so wrong. I can't even begin to explain how wrong that argument is. And so I had to write a whole section in Obsolete Paradigm about why that's completely unbelievable. There's absolutely no way that Peter was not a rabbi. He had to be a educated rabbi. It's entirely plausible that he was educated in Greek. Entirely plausible that he could write First Peter. So all the arguments against First Peter are bogus and easily refutable. But it's still possible. It could be forged. It could be post-war. So it's not a smoking gun, is what I'm saying. But I don't know. I'm above 50% on that. I think it's like maybe 60% chance it's an authentic letter, and it's an example of Peter writing to his diaspora Jewish colleagues, because he knows he's competing with Paul now, because Paul's spreading he's got to get ahead of Paul's thing, and so he's got his own letter for it. So and there's also issues I should point out. First Peter might be meddled with, so that we might not have the original version of it. It might be a pastiche of multiple letters. There's a lot of other questions about First Peter that have to be resolved. So it's not a straightforward question. Anyway, that's the best answer I can give you.
I just wanted to
right
ask
now.
this really quick thing, if that's fine.
Sure.
This is really interesting to me. So you look at Bayesian arguments, right? And so what is your view on the Bayesian arguments for the resurrection, like what Swinburne has put out, if you've read it, what Swinburne put out about it?
All right, so I'll answer this one quickly for people. I actually wrote about this. So I have a blog. I think it's called Crank Bayesians. Let me check to make sure that's what it's called. And I do Swinburne and Unwin. Unwin's another. Yeah. Crank Bayesians, Swinburne and Unwin. That's UNWIN. You can go to my blog, which
I
is.
had no idea you wrote a blog about this. I didn't even know you looked into this, but yeah.
I've written 1 million articles on my blog for, holy shit, is it 30 years now? No, close to 30 years. It's been a long time. Yeah, it's worth going to. So it's richardcarrier.info. So richardcarrier.info. And you can, first of all, there's a category drop-down menu for general subjects, but you can also use the search box. So you could look for Swinburne. You probably get more articles for Swinburne. If you look for Unwin, there's only one article, and that's the one that we're interested in now. Yeah, and I go into that. Like, this actually goes back to 2005, because when The Empty Tomb was published, that was an edited volume with Lauder and Price. And a bunch of us were in that. Michael Martin, Jeffrey Lauder, Robert Price contributed. I had multiple chapters myself. Still to this day, I think holds up as a really good book. I don't agree with every chapter in it, but mine are pretty solid. Lauder's is pretty useful. There's other good ones in there. But even since then, people have been challenging the so-called Bayesianism of Swinburne. It's crank. It's a crank use of Bayes' theorem. And there was a hot minute when Craig was using it, and then it was being used against him, and he realized Bayes' theorem is a fucking torpedo for his entire religion. So he became an anti-Bayesian. That's worth pointing out. That happened as well. I have an article about crank Bayesianism in Craig as well. You can check that out. But yeah, no, Swinburne's completely misusing the argument. He's not building a correct reference class. His prior probabilities are fucking wildly ridiculous. He's not doing a correct. If you're going to do a valid Bayesian argument, you can't leave evidence out, right? It's a fundamental. Like if E and B do not together constitute everything you know, the conclusion is invalid, right? Like just full on. So all things you know, all the evidence you have, all the things you know about the world have to be in E and B in the equation for Bayes' theorem. And Swinburne just fucking rolls right over that. He's a typical Christian apologist where any argument he makes, when you put the evidence back in that he's left out, it flips the argument from for God to against God. Same as any other apologist. The only thing that's different is that he rewords the sham that he's doing using math and Bayes. So he's just doing the same stupid, fallacious bullshit, but he's just giving it a veneer of mathematics, and it's just a scam. And so yeah, it's bogus. So anyway, go there, you'll check it out. They'll get you what you want. Yeah.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, JC. Appreciate you. Before we ping pong back over to Video Ninja, I did want to give Dalton, the Bible guy, a chance. I know Dalton's been waiting for a bit. Dalton, I know all your information, everything like that. So how you doing there, Dalton?
Hey, good to see you, bud. And also good to talk to you again, Dr. Carrier. I called in once, I think it was like a year ago, and I asked you about Paul and the resurrection. And today I have another question, and I've written it down to make it as concise as possible.
Okay.
Don't want to waste anyone's time. Okay, so my question is this. And this question actually applies to both mythicism and historicity, so it kind of is like for everybody. John J. Collins has argued that the one like a son of man in Daniel 7 is best understood as an angelic figure, possibly Michael. If that reading is correct, I'm curious about the plausibility of an early Christian interpretive synthesis within Daniel itself. Daniel 9 refers to both an anointed prince, Mashiach Nagid, and an anointed one who is cut off. Then in Daniel 12:1, Michael arises, and in the Septuagint, the verb is anestisetai, the same verb family later used for resurrection language in the New Testament.
Yeah.
So my question is
100%. Yeah.
So my question is, in your view, is it historically plausible that early Christians could have read these passages together, Daniel 7, 9, and 12, and interpret them as predicting the death and resurrection of a messianic son of man, Michael figure?
Holy shit, fucking A. Yeah, 100%. And I've said this multiple times. Yeah. I think it's highly likely. And the more I study, like the more scholarship I read and so on, the more convinced of this that I am. I have a footnote on it in on the historicity of Jesus. Oh, okay. So I guess I have I have a peer-reviewed article coming out this year in it's the Canadian. What is it? God damn it. Anyway, it's a Canadian journal, a Canadian theology journal, and about this, and it's about the dying Messiah concept predating Christianity. Like literally, like 40 scholars agree with me on this. Like it's a long list, and I go through like I have to like fucking beat this horse dead because there's so many people claiming that these guys don't exist. And anyway, so but I have a footnote in there where I reference the evidence that has arisen since I published my book on the historicity of Jesus that has made me even more confident in what you're suggesting. And you're right. Like if you could plug Son of Man into Michael, it's just one more. Like it's like how many more examples of evidence do we need before we decide this? But yeah, it's pretty strong evidence. And one of the reasons that a lot of scholars are resistant to this is because it's the Jehovah's Witnesses figured this out, right? Like Jehovah's Witnesses are all big on how Jesus is Michael. And because Jehovah's Witnesses are quote unquote fake Christians, nothing they say could possibly be true. It'd be horrifying to admit that they're right about anything. So there's a strong sectarian resistance to this in the field of biblical studies. No one wants to admit this because they don't want to throw a bone to Jehovah's Witnesses because everybody hates Jehovah's Witnesses.
Do you cover more of
but
this
they're
Michael
right.
stuff in your new book?
Yeah, they're right. I cite the new stuff, so I have a brief reference to it, and I cite this stuff. So Hannah is the big author, Daryl Hannah. And not the actress. Scholar. Daryl Hannah wrote a book about this. Is Jesus Michael? I can't remember the title of it. I wrote a blog about it. In that blog, I talk about some of the other evidence that I would add to what Hannah has. And that's one of the things. There was some other stuff that has accumulated since then that's convinced me that, and you mentioned, and I mentioned this on the Historicity of Jesus, you mentioned the resurrection language is in there, 12:1. Like if you're doing Pesher on Daniel, you've got connections, like so many connections to pull exactly like what you're talking about. It's like, so it says the Messiah will die, and then roughly 3.5 years later will be the end of the world. And then Daniel 12 has Michael arises and kicks everybody's ass or whatever, and then 3.5 years later, everybody like the end of the world. And it's like, wait a minute, that would mean that Michael in 12 is the dying guy he's the prince in 9. Anyway, so like the math just works out, etc. And so it just seems very easy, given like the crazy lunatic Pesher logic that everybody was doing back then. And you could read the Dead Sea Scrolls where they're getting Melchizedek as this weird wizard flying down from outer space and killing all of the devil's armies and all. Like it's this weird ass shit they get out of random passages in the Bible. So yeah, reading weird shit is easy. And this is not even that weird, right? Like this connection that you're talking about. So I'm pretty convinced by it myself. But I acknowledge that not everybody's on board with it yet. I think I know why they're not. But so no, you're not off base. I think you've got a really good logical line of thought there.
Is that Daryl D. Hannah, Michael and Christ, Michael Traditions,
Yes.
and Angel Christology,
Yes.
and Early Christianity? Okay, yeah.
A fantastic
I'll check it
book,
out.
by the way. Yeah, it's a great book, even if you just want to learn about first century Judaism, angelology, and so on. But it's also good for like this Christian idea. Like there's a lot of evidence in like Christian fathers and stuff like that this was kind of like a known secret, like an open secret in early Christianity, that Jesus was Michael. But you're not supposed to say it out loud, like whatever. But yeah, no, and it goes into other things like the Metatron is also Michael, and he talks about different things. There's a possibility that Metatron is a title and not a person, so that who the Metatron is might change, like God might change it from Gabriel to Michael. So like Metatron is like he's the one who shows up as the burning bush, or wrestles with Isaac or whatever, or not
Right.
Isaac. But anyways, it's Israel wrestles with Israel. And so like the version of God that people meet in the real world is the Metatron, who's an angel. who's kind of like a drone that God manipulates to speak for him. Weirdly accurately depicted in Dogma the movie, but anyway, it's actually Dogma's not far wrong in terms of the actual weird ass angelology and the bizarre rules that worked. I especially like the storyline of that is not wildly wrong. You think it's like crazy that God would become incarnate to go play whatever, foosball, whatever it was that he loved to do, and then gets knocked out, and so now God is unconscious and he's not governing the world anymore, and so you have this whole plot. You think that's super weird? That would never happen. But I have to tell you a story. So there's a story in the Talmud, and this is a real story, about this rabbi. This rabbi learned, he's so wise, he's so educated, and he studies crazy, and he learned the names of all the angels. And apparently, the names of the angels are like pin numbers to control the angels. So if you know their name, their true name, by the way, that you can order them to do things and they have to obey you. And so this righteous, and he's a righteous man. This is very important. He's a rabbi and he's righteous, so he can never do wrong because he's righteous. And so every time that God sent the angels to like wreak havoc on Israel, like kill everybody for something, like, how dare you perform a census, death everywhere. He sends angels to go kill everybody. This righteous guy would use the names of the angels to order them away, go away. And he would keep preventing God from being, and God can't contradict a righteous man. This is another weird esoteric lore within Talmudic rabbinical thought, is that God cannot contradict the order of a righteous man because he's a righteous man, so the order has to be good. And so God can't do an evil thing. Anyway, but here's the funny thing. Here's how the story ends. That God changes the names of all the angels. So he changed all the pin numbers to stop this guy from thwarting him. The reason I tell that story is that is a wackadoo fucking story, right? And yet it's told totally seriously as if this really happened. And this is how the world really works. And so if that's the case, like when you're talking about what you're talking about, like the resurrection is all right there in Daniel and all that stuff, that is not wackadoo at all. Like that is like completely in line with the weird shit that they actually believed back then. Anyway, so that's
considering.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, thank you, Dr. Carrier. I appreciate the answer.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming up and asking, Dalton. Appreciate you.
No problem, bud.
All right. Okay, King of Knives, we will get to you here in a second, but we do have some others waiting over on Video Ninja that I did want to actually get on up in here. So first off is Mike NC. Hey there, Mike. Are you over 18? And what are your pronouns? Mike, you there? Oh. Unmute. Mike, can you hear us? Can you talk? I don't know what's going on with Video Ninja. I think Mike left and he may be trying to come back. Let's see. I think, do we have any more? We've got a lot of gifts over there on the TikTok. I will address those nearer to the end. There is somebody specifically that I wanted you to say something about. So Rat Soup asks, someone asked me the other day if I was a Paul Mythicist, how would you guys reply?
I don't know how John would reply. I've mentioned this a couple times today. That's actually now it's a fringe but mainstream position, because it's kind of the position. It's certainly a position of Livesey. It's almost the position of Vincent. Trobish might be on like at least agnostic, and they're making these cases under peer review. These are serious scholars with like real credentials and stuff. So. No, it's not crazy anymore to suggest that. I don't buy it, but I have reasons why I don't buy it. But I don't think it's crank.
Right. Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily think that it was crank either. I definitely need to see more scholarship on it and everything. And to be quite honest, if Jaron and Matt Wingo, if they could, or sorry, Jaron Wingo and Matt, I can't remember Matt's name, but last name, but if they could get some of their stuff put through peer review, I mean, I think that would be really interesting to see and read, and I think that would be great. So I have been trying to hit Video Ninja. We've got Sam over here on Video Ninja. Hey there, Sam. How you doing? Can you hear us?
Hello there.
Awesome. Okay, so Sam, are you over 18 and what are your pronouns?
Yes, I'm over 18 and I'm a he and he.
He, him. Awesome. Great. All right. So Sam, what would you like to ask Richard Carrier?
My question is particularly regarding the particular book I was reading. I'm sure Dr. Carrier is familiar of it. It's a famous book by Richard Carrier. Oh, sorry, it's a famous book by Richard Bauckham.
Okay.
The Jesus and Eyewitnesses, and in a particular chapter, he makes. I find it a new argument, so I haven't heard of it. I haven't read a lot of scholarship on it, so I was just wanting to know what Richard Carrier thinks of it. Yeah. So he argues that the Book of Acts and the Book of Luke are, present the names which are, I think he calls it onomastic congruence. And he argues that the names of the Book of Acts and the Book of Luke are quite reliable and fit well with the ancient Jewish, like the names of the Second Temple period, and the Simon and all these names, and they fit well. So he essentially argues this, and then he goes on to conclude that these names couldn't have possibly been made up. And in the light of this, I was wondering, if this is true, then how can we reconcile this with the idea that Jesus was not a historical figure? And a second question, just like this, is going to be, do you think that the Book of Acts and the Book of Luke were written by the same author? That's my question.
Yeah. Oh, wait. Okay, that sounds like two questions. The first is Luke Acts. Yeah, I do believe that they're written by the same author. There are serious arguments against that. So, like, for instance, Vincent is totally arguing against that. So there are mainstream arguments against that conclusion now, that more now than there had been 10 years ago. But I'm not convinced. I'm pretty sure, stylistically and structurally, Luke and Acts are a common set of volumes written by the same person. And they might have been edited by different people over time, but definitely the originals are. Now, your first question, though, is the argument from names. The what do you call it? Nomological consistency. I'm very familiar with that. I have a whole section on it in Obsolete Paradigm. So it's the Obsolete Paradigm of a Historical Jesus. That's my latest book. Because that came out, I can't remember. I think it came out after On the Historicity of Jesus. Or maybe didn't. No, might not have done. Because I think I originally dismissed Bauckham by citing all the mainstream scholars who said he was full of shit. And so that's On the Historicity of Jesus. But now the Gregor team, Camille Gregor and others, Brian Bleiss, I think, is his co-author, has come out with at least 2 articles, peer-reviewed studies refuting Bauckham on this. There's been a reply article that looks really specious to me, and I'm waiting for their reply to that article. So this is going on in the literature. But I did my own analysis, and I can easily show, and I do show in Obsolete Paradigm, that this names argument is completely fraudulent. It's completely made up. There's no statistics. He doesn't run any actual statistics. He makes these assertions. It's kind of like Fox News or to Donald Trump. He just makes assertions because I have reduced the price of eggs to 1,000%. Or whatever, it's like that can't even be mathematically possible. How can that be? It's both. There's no true math. There's no actual math, by the way, in Bauckham. He just makes these assertions, but also the generalizations are false. They're provably false, wildly false. And I give examples of how they're wildly false. I show what names should show up if he was right. If his thesis is correct, there should be other names there that aren't there. There should be a bunch of names that are there that shouldn't be there. And so it's completely ridiculous. So when you actually go and use his own table, he has his own table of name frequencies. You use his own data, and you can show that he's completely wrong. So it's just apologetics. It's made up. made up stuff. Anyway, so if you want to find out like why and see that, so I have my section on it in Obsolete Paradigm. There I also cite the peer-reviewed articles by Gregor's team that do like serious statistical analysis of it. You really don't even need to do the math to show that it's bogus. But yeah, it's apologetics, not serious.
Yeah, thank you so much for your answer. It was pretty interesting. Yeah.
Thanks.
All right. Thank you, Sam. Appreciate you coming up. So next we have King of Knives. Awesome name, by the way. Are you over 18? Yeah. Are you over 18? And what are your pronouns?
Yeah, I am, and he.
All right. So King of Knives, what would you like to ask Carrier tonight?
Basically, like the history of the world. Like, where did we come from, right? Have you ever heard of the book called The Wall Chart of World History?
Yes, I have not like pored over it, but I'm aware of its existence. Yeah.
Okay, it shows strong evidence that Israel was a nation for thousands of years, and then it led to the destruction by Babylon, and then they came back, and then the Roman occupation took them over again and destroyed them, and then they came back in their land in 1948. So we know a good amount of history of the time, around 3,000 BC. We have a good understanding of what happened there. So the issue I'm having is that why do people don't think Jesus existed when he's actually one of the most accounted for person in history? And we judge our days by his existence and what he did, because no one can find flaw in Jesus the man.
Wait, hold on. Okay, that was a bunch of stuff. That was a lot of stuff. The calendar argument is a terrible argument. And then
that's one point. That's one point.
I know, it's just okay. So you had the calendar argument, and then you had the Israel forever argument.
As a nation for thousands of years. Like, can you say it right, please?
Yeah, it's not even thousands of years.
So King of Knives. First of all,
impossible.
We need to establish that, you know, we're trying to have a civil conversation here. There's no need for you to placate your own sensibilities and your own need for superiority. If you can't, then we'll just address your comments and drop your ass, okay? So if you can be civil and have a good conversation, you can stay up.
Of course.
Okay.
So the calendar argument, I mean, both of these are non sequiturs. So like in formal logic, like the conclusion has to actually follow from the premises, and the conclusion never follows. Like the conclusion here is Jesus is real because Dionysius Exiguus came up with a calendar. Like that doesn't work at all. First of all, the dates are wrong. Like the calendar that we use based on the mythical origin of Jesus doesn't match either gospel. So, and I wrote about this. I have a whole study of this in Hitler, Homer, Bible, Christ, which is my book. I talk about the nativity, the contradiction between Luke and Matthew on the nativity. Matthew puts the birth of Jesus around 6 BC. Luke puts it around 5 or 6 AD. Neither puts it in 1 AD. And so when the medieval monk came up with the chronology that we use now, which is before Christ and the year of the Lord, he made a mathematical mistake, got it wrong. And so we're stuck with this error. So like, even if Jesus was born in either 6 BC or 6 AD, he wasn't born in 1 AD. So we're not even using the correct years for the years since Jesus was supposedly born. So that's a whole other side thing. It doesn't really matter, because even if everybody was wrong about the birth date of Jesus, he still could have existed. So like, whether Jesus existed or was born in 6 BC or 6 AD or 1 AD, it doesn't matter. All we know is that the chronology we're using now, the dating that we're using, we're talking about what is the year now, 2026. It's based on a mathematical error, whether Jesus existed or not, and it's just wrong. So that doesn't support the historicity of Jesus. It doesn't refute the historicity of Jesus either. It doesn't do either. So anyway, that's the calendar argument. That doesn't work. Then there's the Israel thing. So as best I understand it, like, it doesn't make any sense. So I guess if you're really fudging on the use of the plural thousands, you could get the biblical history, like the mythical history of Israel, to last thousands of years. So, like, what is Joshua's conquest? What according to myth? Like, what are we talking about? Like 1400 BC ish, somewhere there around there.
Yeah.
1200, something like that. And then Israel ceases to exist 70 AD. So that's not quite 2,000 years. So you don't really get the plural out of that. But also it's problematic because even according to the Bible, it was actually multiple countries. So you had the state, and then it collapsed into two states, and then one state was annihilated, and then another state was annihilated. And then it was a satrapy, and then it was a province,
It was
and so on. So
David united them.
yeah. So it wasn't really. There's not really this consistent existence of Israel, but it doesn't matter. Even if there was, let's say,
Wait.
let's
there is
take
no.
China. China has a better claim here. So China, the unification of China is what is that? Qin Dynasty. When does the Qin Dynasty start? Somebody quickly find that for me. It's pre-Han. Qin Dynasty, unification of China. Someone get me that.
221.
So what is that?
Is it 221
roughly,
BC?
so let's just say 200 BC. It's been unified ever since. So that's over 2,000 years. So China's got the longest existing civilization in that we have, continuous. So unlike Israel, that got wiped out multiple times and had to rebuild, and was never independent like until 1948, right? So like as soon as it got wiped out, it was always a satrapy or a province, or it was always a state, never a nation, right? Briefly under the Hasmoneans, it was kind of independent-ish, but that didn't last very long. But no, China's been consistently unified for over 2,000 years. Does that mean, therefore, that the monkey god is real or whatever? Right? Like you could go through any kind of like myth or legend in China. Just because China's existed for thousands of years, it doesn't support the existence of that person.
Exactly,
So the existence of Israel doesn't have anything to do with Jesus, right? Like the history of Jesus
between that analogy and Israel is that Israel claimed that God helped them. China doesn't claim that at all. They were just a nation. They just made it on their own.
They did.
Their hard work.
No, China claims the power of heaven.
China
like
has gods,
literally,
of course they do.
Yeah, that helped them all the time. In fact, there's
no evidence of that. That's what I'm trying to say.
I mean, yeah, there's no evidence that God helped Israel either. Like God's a super letdown.
Through
Israel, every single time that a major empire went up against Israel, Israel got crushed and lost. So God is clearly pretty weak. He can't even defeat iron chariots, as the saying goes.
What do you mean?
So no, that doesn't.
Israel won a lot of battles. What are you talking about, man?
It got what? It got.
Yeah. So there's no. I mean, King and Knights. You know about the one. No, you know about the one time in the Old Testament where God could not defeat people because they had iron chariots, right? Like it's a well-known thing.
It's in the Bible, yeah. But no, in terms of history,
ones that he did.
The Assyrians completely wiped it out. So they took over and defeated Israel. The Babylonians did. The Persians gave them like independence within their state, so they were actually part of the empire. The Greeks kicked their ass. The Romans kicked their ass. They didn't exist for 1,000 years after the Romans kicked their ass, and then the only reason that they exist again is because a bunch of like crazy people funded essentially a genocide in Palestine to like recreate it. This example of like trying to fulfill your own prophecy with guns and tanks. It wasn't God. It was guns and tanks.
Okay, a bunch of crazy people. Okay. Then why did they give?
Yeah. Do you know who supplied the weapons to Israel that started Israel in 1948 that allowed them to kick the ass and kill a zillion Palestinians and drive them out?
UK?
No, Ghislaine Maxwell's fucking father. Look it up. Look it up. Ghislaine Maxwell, the fucking Epstein people. Yes,
exactly.
Her super corrupt father, famously corrupt guy, basically supplied half the weapons that allowed Israel to exist. And he's not the only like criminal that was involved in recreating Israel.
Yeah, I'm asking you.
But this has nothing to do with Jesus. This has nothing to do with Jesus. So it's a moot point.
No.
Yeah, hold on. King of Knives. Hold on 1 second. We need to recap real quick, okay? We need to recap. So you came up with a couple of arguments. One, Israel lasted a long time. It got reestablished, and somehow that says something about Jesus. And then two was the calendar argument, which is a really poor argument. And you pointed out it was just one particular argument, right? So I guess
we
Mike
didn't even address that yet. We didn't even address that.
No, that's the first thing that Carrier did. Yeah, Carrier initially addressed it. That was the first thing.
Both arguments are non sequiturs. So these are fallacies. The calendar thing has nothing to do with whether Jesus existed.
Okay, can I answer? What you said, one account is 5 BC. The other account was, what was the other one? There's two accounts, right?
Yeah, 680 and 6 BC.
But it still puts it within a 5-year window of when he actually was there, right? So,
yeah, which can be done for a mythical person as much as there was a birth date for Osiris. We have a year for Osiris. We have a year for Hercules. Yeah, Romulus. We have a year for Romulus. These are all fake people. Having a year of a date where someone existed, who didn't, doesn't make them exist. So it's a non sequitur. It's a fallacy.
Jesus could exist, right?
Yeah, the 1 in 3 chance is what I come up with.
1 in 3, 33%.
Well, yeah. So hold on. In Obsolete Paradigm, didn't Chrissy Hansen help you drive it down to 1 in 4?
Unintentionally, it's 1 in 4. Yeah.
Yeah.
But you could still say 1 in 3 because 1 in 4 is within the margin of error.
Yeah.
So it just basically narrowed my tolerances. But yeah. But if you don't agree with Hansen and Gregor, it's back to 1 in 3. So 1 in 3 at most, right? Like that's the highest probability.
I don't know. I think like most major historians in the world would say that he did exist, but the crucifixion and the resurrection, the resurrection probably didn't exist. That's what the argument is. It's not that he did exist. It's did the resurrection happen? That's what we should be talking
it's totally
about.
I mean, I did for like 30 years. Yeah, I'm like one of the leading counter apologists for resurrection apologetics. And when I debate resurrection, I always assume historicity. I never use mythicism as an argument against resurrection. You can go look for Richard Carrier, Resurrection of Jesus, Google it. You'll find like a million videos, hundreds of articles. I've written books on this. So yeah, the best one, frankly, is Resurrection, Faith or Fact, with Blomberg, myself, a few other Christian apologists and atheists. Well, one other atheist, one other Christian apologist. It's, I think, the best summary of the state of the field for resurrection apologists. So folks can go check that out, like Resurrection, Faith or Fact. And I have 2 chapters in there, which is my introduction of who I am, and then my analysis of the debate. And the debate is between, I think, Blomberg and Stecker. Stecker is taking the atheist position. And so if you want to go into resurrection apologetics, that's a good place to start, because I cite everything that's relevant there for breadcrumbing that.
To summarize what I'm trying to say is that the reason I added the history of Israel is because the prophets were talking about a Messiah coming. Where would be born a virgin, just like how other stories in the world before Jesus.
That's not in the. That's not. It's not.
It's prophecy.
It's not in the Bible. There's no virgin in the Bible. That's a Christian error. There's they made a mistake. It's a linguistic mistake. It's not in the Bible. No.
Yeah. King of Knives. Well, I do want to keep things moving here. There's somebody else that wants to ask a question. If you'll follow me, we can definitely spar over this topic. But these are like pretty basic ass sort of things that.
I don't know. You guys really haven't really judged history, and you have a false understanding of history.
Oh no! My finger slipped, and now he's out. So sorry.
Yeah, I'm a little weirded out by the fact that the Christian apologist is the one who calls himself King of Knives.
Yeah,
that worries me a bit. I don't know. Yeah, okay.
But thank you for the clip.
In this day and age, where we're like literally going to war with Iran over fucking Armageddonism and shit.
Yeah.
Whatever. Okay.
Thank you so much there, King of Knives. Please just follow me so that we can spar in the future. But Diamond go ahead.
That's literally what John does, by the way, is what that whole conversation. John is an expert at that. Like, he's fucking got it down. You don't need me here for that.
Yeah.
At all. And if you want my take on it, like I said, his videos, my blog has tons of stuff on it. Check it out.
Yeah. So now, Diamond Child, are you over 18? And what are your pronouns?
What's going on, guys? I'm 28, and I don't know. I'm just a guy here in Canada.
Okay, so if I were to say he came up to ask Carrier a question, that would be correct, or would she be correct, or would they be correct, or would it be something else?
Yeah, he's good.
Okay, right. That's how English language works. So Diamond Child, what have you got for Carrier tonight?
Yeah, I was just scrolling through TikTok. Honestly, I was just listening in there, hearing what's
Oh, wow.
up. I don't know what's going on here at all. I'm just here, so looks like a cool conversation, you know.
That's actually kind of cool, but okay.
Yeah. Okay. Well,
right.
so just to catch you up there, Diamond Child, both of us are mythicists. Carrier is a historian, and he's a mythicist, and he's written multiple books on the mythicist position. He's got one of the only peer-reviewed monographs, well, technically two now, peer-reviewed monographs on the position. So, are you a mythicist?
So I don't have any position or anything like that. I just listening, going through life, hearing other people's positions, just trying to learn. And,
right.
So are you guys? You guys got some? You got some like books and stuff out? Is that you're saying?
I do. Yeah. So John, the host, like this is his show. He does this all the time. So you might want to come back and check him out. He does a lot of this kind of stuff. Myself, yeah, I'm the historian / philosopher who's published a lot. I actually have 8 or 9 books now. If you go to richardcarrier.info, that's .info, and then look at books on my top menu, you can see the list of all the books I've written. And I've written several books related to this subject, 2 directly on did Jesus exist, and those are 2 serious academic studies of this question. And yeah, I do find that probably he didn't, and the consensus is wrong. But I think it's a respectable chance he did, so I don't think it's absurd to suggest he did. But anyways, yeah, if you want to look into that further, go check that out. And also, if you want to check out more on my blog, I've got social media, my articles there, and I cover many subjects, not just this one. But this is one that it was my postdoc research project, so it's kind of one of the big ones that I'm well known for.
Yeah, outside of Carrier's mythicist work and his history work, he's got a phenomenal backlog or catalog rather of philosophy articles. Tackling the Kalam cosmological argument and other things that you probably hear a lot here on YouTube. And YouTube and TikTok, but yeah, he's got a lot of great stuff in the whole gambit of this.
I just got one question tonight. So basically, I think this is maybe why I came on here. So let's say I had a personal trainer, right? Let's say I was trying to lose some weight and I got a personal trainer, and the trainer trained me, and I lost some weight from this trainer, and I went around and told people about this trainer that trained me. Who would get the credit for that weight that I lost? Would it be fair to give the trainer some credit, or would I take full credit for that? Random question.
I don't know. It's not binary question, right? You can both take credit for it, right? First of all, you obviously have to take some credit because you freaking did it, right? You could have not.
Get some credit.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
You're saying both get some credit, basically.
And that's I'm assuming that we have enough evidence that the trainer actually had really anything to do. Because there's a lot of scams going on where people will get you to do something where really you're doing all the work and they're not contributing anything. But I'm assuming I know some personal trainers, it's a real profession, it's a real skill. And their direction and help and so on makes a big difference, absolutely. I would say
I was just wondering, do you guys sorry, I totally cut you off there. Do you guys what do you guys are your positions established already? Are you guys kind of here as experts, or what are you guys here as? What's your purpose?
Yeah, so Carrier is an expert. I am a layman that just reads a lot.
Expert in what? Mythicism, you were saying?
Yeah, well, my PhD is in the history of religion and philosophy and science. And then I have a CV, curriculum vitae of peer-reviewed articles in philosophy. So I actually am a professional philosopher and a professional historian. And my specialty in history is early Roman Empire, and particular intellectual history. So history of science,
Listen,
philosophy,
Carrie,
and
let
religion.
me cut to the chase now, Carrie. And what was your what's the other guy's name? The other host, Carrie and.
Well, it's
Carrier.
It's Richard Carrier, and I'm Godless
Just like
Engineer.
Richard Carrier and Godless
Engineer.
Engineer. Listen. You guys are gonna laugh. You're gonna do the whole spiel. I understand. That's just how it goes. It's fine. But I want to tell you guys why I really came on here, so let you guys know Jesus Christ is Lord. God loves you guys, man. Listen, we've all got a God-shaped emptiness in our souls. And I was
in your holes?
Man, my parents.
Wait, hold on.
Parents,
say that again.
My parents. I went through
in
so
your
much
holes?
growing up, man, and I was so.
Oh, no, I'm so sorry. I'm having to mute you. Your holes? You've got
something was said there that I'm like, maybe, I don't know what's going on there. Yeah.
You guys are scared?
We're not scared.
No. You said something alarming, and I feel like I'm being gaslighted. Like I don't know if I heard what I thought.
Right now, I said we all have a hole, like in our hearts, a hole.
It's like a gape,
guys. Just think basically, guys. Don't get too deep. We got a hole in our hearts, and we feel empty. And I was living with that hole because I'm from Ghana, right? And so my parents are from a corner of the world where they did like the dictatorial kind of parenting, what we say goes, and that's all I ever knew, you know. But I could have grown up in a different place, and I would have had a different upbringing. But all I'm trying to say is,
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry, Diamond. Did Jesus go elbow deep in your hole, or was it more shoulder deep?
He saved my life. He went so deep. All my brokenness, he took it all out, man. I'm a free bird.
Damn, he prolapsed you.
Whoa! I'm telling you, man, he changed my life.
The accent here.
My soul. Listen, I've been sitting here quietly listening to you guys, but I'm charged up, man. I'm in here in the dark room right now, but I got so much.
Yeah.
You give your soul.
If Jesus prolapsed my anus, it would definitely strike me that way too.
So look, Diamond Child, your accent sounds Midwest or Canadian.
Forgive your family.
Like upper Midwest or Canadian. Like it doesn't sound like you were raised in Ghana. Sounds like you might have been raised in Minnesota or Alberta, maybe. I don't know.
He'll help you forgive that hurt you, man. He loves you so much, man. I love you.
Yeah, we don't have that. That's not. We're not. Yeah. No. This. We don't need the snake oil. We don't have the.
No, I don't really care about being preached at.
I don't need this. I don't need my seven demons cast out of me or anything. Okay. For folks who are interested in that. I did a whole series on Justin Brierley. So I know the audience might know Justin Brierley, renowned British radio host, Christian, I think kind of liberal-ish Christian. I'm not entirely sure. But I have a whole series on his book that you did recently, and it kind of touches on these issues, the idea of, do we really have a hole that we need to fill with God, etc. That exact wording doesn't come up, but if you want to like see why we think this is snake oil, and it's kind of like it's one of those things like, why do these scissors not work? I need robotic scissors. It's kind of like the 2 a.m. Buy the weird product channel. I guess maybe I'm too old. Maybe those don't exist anymore. But anyway, so if people want to like catch up on why I'm not buying that, why I don't think that's a plausible approach to things, read my series on Justin Brierley, because there I'm like interacting with a sincere Christian apologist. He's not one of the apologists that I think is a liar. Like he's just like, I think he's sincere. But I go into like why I don't buy it, and I explain why in there. And that's probably the best introduction, because from there I link to a lot of my other stuff, and then you can like search my blog for things if you have deeper questions, etc. And so that's what I recommend to folks.
Okay, LB Hayes was able to get back in, so we have time for just one more question from LB Hayes. I hope that LB has their mic situated. Hey there, LB, are you there?
Okay, can you guys hear me now?
Yes, we got you, LB.
All right.
Are you over 18, and what are your pronouns?
Yes. She, her. Fine.
Cool. Oh, awesome. All right. So, what question do you have for Carrier tonight?
Okay, well, I'm under a little bit of pressure because you said there's one last question, so I'm going to let him pick. Either metaphysical naturalism as the topic. I have your book right here. I've been reading it. Or something about Roman history that has to do with the character of Pontius Pilate and your thought on that, but I'll get to the question. So you can pick which one.
Yeah. So I always do love to talk about philosophy and stuff. But John organized this particular thing today to be about Jesus stuff.
Okay.
So I think it would be more appropriate to pick the Pilate question.
Okay, that sounds good. Well, I actually homeschool my kids. I'm trying to take a secular spin on it. I've been through a lot. I'm coming from an evangelical background, and my mind's been open to a lot of things over the years. So to get to my question, in one of the history books, and we were doing Roman history, it mentioned something about Pontius Pilate having written to Caesar Tiberius about Jesus Christ. And it, of course, stated it as though this was more factual. And I thought, this is a question for Dr. Richard Carrier. I had never heard about it before. So can you please tell us more about that? And if any of that at all, was Pontius Pilate even ever linked to Jesus at all in an actual historical way at all?
Yeah. No, that's a great question. A lot of it's called the Acts of Pilate, right? So it gets referenced a lot in the late 2nd century by Christians. And you described the way that I think Tertullian describes it. So Tertullian was this Christian writer, kind of a dickhead lawyer in the late, super sexist, infamously sexist Christian in the late 2nd century. And he does write about the Acts of Pilate. And what he says about the Acts of Pilate is patently ridiculous. It had to be some sort of fictional text that Christians were circulating at the time. No, we don't actually have what he was referring to. There is an Acts of Pilate that was forged in the Middle Ages. We're not really sure that that's what he means. And there was one that was kind of attached to the end of what's called the Gospel of Nicodemus, I think. And we're not really sure if that's what he was referring to. So like there's a bunch of different, and there was one that was supposedly circulated by Galerius as a slander against the Christians in the late 3rd century. Well, we don't have that. Anyway, so the whole Acts of Pilate is a complicated question. And this argument was actually used seriously and sincerely by John Sheffield, that as a Christian apologist, a liberal-minded Christian apologist that I've interacted with a lot. And I think if you're interested to see how this argument gets used and then what are the arguments against it, I would say look at my article. We did a debate online. It's a written debate. But they're like short entries, and you just go through them. And it's on the long ending of Mark. So if you go to my blog, richardcarrier.info, search long ending of Mark, and just enjoy yourself going through this very interesting debate. Jonathan Sheffield will make his case, and you'll read it, and you'll find it familiar. You've probably seen a similar argument before, and you'll see my response, and we go back and forth for a while. And that'll kind of like get you up to speed on this, on how it works. Obviously, the short of it is it's clearly a forgery. We're not sure if the forgeries that we have are the ones that Tertullian was looking at. It sounds like maybe not, because we don't have exactly what he describes. But yeah, it's completely, in my opinion, dubious. But we don't have any like authentic version of it. So like we don't have anything that's a believable version of the Acts of Pilate that connects him to Jesus. It seems like it's all Christian and what's called apocrypha, which is like they made up a whole bunch of weird legends later and invented stories like constantly. They did this. And that would be one of them. But yeah, and that's the mainstream view too. So I'm not like being a weirdo here. Like the mainstream consensus is that the Acts of Pilate were a Christian forgery. There's no real Acts of Pilate that mention Jesus or anything like that. So there's no actual history that connects Pilate to Jesus. It's only in the Gospels and people who use the Gospels as sources, or who use people as sources who use the Gospels as sources, right? So it all goes back really to Mark. It's like it seems to be invented by Mark, and it's just embellished since then. Does that answer your question? Is that adequate enough?
Yes, it is. And I do so much appreciate your blog. I've gotten so much out of your blog, Dr. Carrier, and I look forward to looking that up on there. So thank you very much for your time.
Cool.
Thank you, LB Hayes, for coming up and being patient with, all of the technology and everything like that. I appreciate you.
Oh, hey, I'm glad it worked. Thanks for letting me come on again. Appreciate it.
No problem. All right. You have a good night there, LB.
You too. Thank you.
Bye.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I believe that's going to be it for our show. We have been going for about 3 hours, and I still need to do all of my thank yous and everything like that. So, Turkey, I realize that you just requested up, but we are kind of closing out the stream. So if you could just follow me, I'm definitely planning on having Carrier up again sometime in the near future. So you can definitely just pin your question and we can address it then. Honestly, I think that this, even though we had a little bit of a rough start with the audio, this turned out to be really good. I learned a lot of things technologically that I need to make sure that I get right.
Yeah. I have to point out, like, even right now, I think your audio is still a little studio echoey.
Oh, is it?
Not like enough to be a problem. It just sounds like you're like in a theater or like a stadium. That's what I'm going for. I'm trying to find the word stadium. It sounds like stadium audio right now, and I don't know if that's what you want. You'll play it back and you'll see what I'm talking about. So when you get to it, you'll see if you want to do anything about that or not. It's not interrupting or making it impossible to hear you or anything. So
okay, good. Yeah, I'll definitely have to re-listen to this because having to do like a whole bunch of different things in order to get it to work. So, but yeah, Carrier, I really appreciate you coming up and making yourself available to people tonight. I know everybody really appreciated that. You coming up and doing that. So as far as all of our stuff goes, we did get some testing on our celebrations. We didn't get any money rains, which is an interesting thing there. We didn't get any of those, but we did get celebrations, and I really appreciate that. I want to say thank you to Dipster and, of course, KC for meeting our live goal. Thank you so much for doing that there, hon.
Oh, good. Yeah, awesome.
We got Kevin Rubric sending some roses, and then we've got Mika sending her daily heart, and we had a dolphin that was sent by King of Knives to one of the guests up here.
Oh yeah, oh, nice. Okay, very good. Yeah.
We got Stoic Manda did their dailies. Oh, we got Oceanus Helios doing another super chat there. Dr. Carrier, can you comment on the existence of Christos cults in Greece existing circa 200 BCE or so?
I wonder if that's a reference to Ammon Hillman stuff. No. No. So here's the thing, like the word just means anointed. And so any magical or religious ritual that involves anointing can have the word Christos in it. It doesn't refer to an actual Christ. It's just that when people try to interpret the peculiar Jewish word for anointed as a particular elected savior figure, the Greek word is Christos. That's the best they could come up with, but it's because Christos is anybody who's anointed, usually with oil. So that's the limitation there. Is that no? It's not really that there's a Christos cult. It's just that the word Christos means anointed, and anointed happens everywhere, like cults, priesthoods, kingships. Medicine, like what anybody's in being anointed with anything, the word Christos is going to show up. So yeah, I think like, and I'm aware that Ammon Hillman tries to spin this into that kind of thing. That there was Christos cults in 200 BC. That's like not really, not in any relevant sense. It's like confusing the word cat. It's like, you know what? We were using a cat to like dig a trench in on a construction site, and it's like, you use like the small furry mammal to dig the trench. They're like, no, cat, it's caterpillar, it's a machine anyway. So it's that kind of thing, like the word is a broad term, and so like you can't play the word game to like get it to mean the same thing as what Judaism means by it. And so anyway, that's my answer to that question.
Okay. Now there is one thing that's usually brought up, especially by like Jaron and Matt over on Christ Before Jesus, and that's like this Serapis Christus or something like that. Does that ring a bell for you? Like, what I've always been a little confused by that.
I would need to see the sources on that. Is what you're talking about. But if you said Serapis Christos, it would just literally be in Greek, anointed Serapis, right? And Serapis is a Greek creation where they took Osiris and Apis, these two Greek gods, and merged them to create a new god called Serapis, who is kind of a reinvention of Asclepius, because he's the healing god. This is all post-Alexander stuff. So when Alexander invaded Greece, they sort of invented this new religion and so on. So it's Serapis. So, but if you said Serapis Christos, you're just talking about anointed Serapis. And so what does that mean? I would need to see it in context. I would need to, what sources are you talking about? Oftentimes, and I don't know, but oftentimes it turns out to be the Historia Augusta, which is a super crank history written in the 4th century, maybe 5th century, where it's one of the weirdest products of ancient history, where someone was writing sort of half-assed histories, biographies of emperors, and at some point they either died or got bored and started literally just making shit up. And so like you keep going through the emperors and it's completely fucking fabricated as you keep going. And so it gets more and more fabricated and made up. And the Serapis stuff that gets mentioned in there is like part of the made up section where they're just riffing. They're just, let's just say this story. It's like The Onion. Like it starts like Breitbart and ends up The Onion. And so like if you had like Breitbart that faded into The Onion, you can't use that as history. Like you can't argue anything from that because you don't know what's in there is like real or not if you can't confirm it externally. So I'm not saying that's what's happening here. I'm just saying be aware of that. Like if you trace it and it says Historia Augusta, like, oh no. So yeah.
Let's see. Casey, my lovely wife, says using her 88 months membership chat, saying, "Don't forget to promo Rocket City Reason." Yeah, yeah. There were some comments over there talking about that. So we've got Rocket City Reason, October 23rd through the 25th, here in Huntsville. And Carrier, I believe you're going to be there, right?
I will be tabling, I think. If it all works out. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yep. So we'll have Richard Carrier there. He's not presenting at the conference, but he will be tabling there, so you can get his books. You can talk to him. It's gonna be a great time. Let's see. I see Jesse in the comments is asking, are the speakers already lined up? And yes, we've already got our full list. We do have one that we're hoping to add here soon. We're having to fill one spot. We've already got somebody that is really interested in doing it, so we'll make that announcement when we get confirmation there. But I can't wait to have you there, Carrier. And
where's the website? Where can people go to see the lineup and all that stuff?
Yeah, thank you.
Because it's a really good lineup. I've checked it out and I'm like excited. So it's gonna be great.
Yeah, it's rocketcityreason.com. You can go there and you can see the schedule, what we've got going, which we've got a full schedule. We've got on Friday night, we've got an Alabama barbecue, we've got a drag show, and then we've got some game stuff that we're going to be doing after that. And there's not an open bar.
I might bring a game that I invented.
Oh yeah?
It's Game Crafter printed and everything. I'll bring it for sure. I don't know if anybody will want to play it, but
I want to play it. It's a cash bar. Yes, we'll have a cash bar open so that people can get their alcohol and everything like that. And then Saturday's our big conference day where we start off with Seth Andrews. He's going to be giving his presentation, and then we've got three panels on there that's got a whole mixture of internet people from like online activism as well as in real life activism, IRL. activism, and then we finish up the day with Forrest Valkai and Erica Gutsick Gibbon, and then after that we're going to have a live line show where we're going to be taking calls. We're going to have a whole bunch of hosts that are also there, so it's going to be a great time. And then Sunday we're actually going to do a group visit to the Space and Rocket Center. So I hope that people can join there. It's rocketcityreason.com for your tickets. You can also get hotel information there. There's currently still rooms available in the block discount, so definitely go and check that out. We are definitely having it at the Marriott. There's been some question about that here recently. Discrepancies with the hotel, but that's definitely where we're having it at. All right, so do want to give a big thank you to a couple more people. We've got Quinn, who did their dailies. King of Knives also did more roses and shit, which I don't know if they know, but I get a little bit of that. I get a little bit of those diamonds or whatnot that they send. Lathe sending in their dailies. Redheaded Trouble sending in their dailies.
Wait, what? That was Lathe. What was it? Lathe what? It was more words. Lathe of Heaven. All right. Sweet. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Ursula Le Guin. Excellent.
Yeah. And then we've got Dank Anders.
And such.
Yeah, and such. Ectotia. Sorry, I know you probably know how.
That was Scotia. Scotia.
Oh, okay. Scotia. Ashlyn doing her dailies along with some goats there. And then we've got PM Toner with a super chat, $5 super chat. It says, what is the probability the Gospels were a response to the Roman destruction of the temple to explain it theologically?
Yeah, like close to 100%.
Yeah. I believe Mark, there's a strongest connection in Mark. Yeah.
And then absolutely. And
all the other Gospels came after
John,
that.
they don't care so much anymore, but yeah, because it's so much later. But yeah, no, definitely Mark. Matthew and Luke are also into that same game.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Kevin, for the extra roses there. Let's see. More roses. Ace sent their dailies. Charles with a live, did 70 lives. Scodia again with roses. Let's get through this. So
is this like ninja stuff? I'm not familiar with this whole like roses and goats and whatnot. So is this like the ninja thing? Like this is a new thing?
Oh no! So this is TikTok. On TikTok, you can give different gifts.
TikTok. Okay. That explains that. Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
I'll have to ask my wife about that because she's the expert.
Yeah. Christina the Godless. What's up there, Christina? Thank you so much for doing your daily heart. Rationale needed. Artie Bacon. Another rationale needed. Casey with the goats. Also, Go Populars. Thank you guys so much for all of this. Sorry, I'm trying to trust but verify. All right. I believe I'm caught up on all of those. Thank you guys so much. Y'all are awesome. Y'all are the reason why we keep on doing these and interacting. Everybody joining up and everything like that. Thank you to everybody over there on the YouTube. Thank you to everybody that sent in the super chats and everything. Carrier, I appreciate you so much for sticking it out for the 3 hours that we've been live and everything. Really appreciate it.
Actually, all the questions were great, even when we got weird. It was fine. Yeah. So cool.
Yeah. All right. Well, we're going to end it there, everybody. I'm going to stop it over here on TikTok first, and then we'll stop it over there on the YouTube. I hope that you guys have a wonderful weekend. We will be live tomorrow night with Volsi. Probably not going to do a 3-hour stream tomorrow night, but I do have Volsi that's coming up, and we'll have these kinks worked out. Hopefully I'll sound better.
Yeah.
But yeah. But anyways, we're going to see all of you heathens later. Don't forget to check out Richard Carrier's website, richardcarrier.info, as well as all the Godless Engineer stuff and rocketcityreason.com. Y'all have a lovely weekend. We'll see you tomorrow night. And don't forget to stand up and use your voice. Bye, heathens. Yeah. All right. It's not over yet, so hold on. I'll tell you when we're clear.